results, which were announced last week publicly. All embargoes were lifted, and by state protocols and board policy, the local school board must formally approve the school improvement plans for priority improvement and turnaround schools. And that is what we are going to be addressing this evening. Dr. K is also here, I think. So if I get anything wrong, please correct me out here. The board is having a discussion on each of the 3 school improvement plans that will come to the board for final approval in early October. I will start providing some context to the entire community who are listening in. 2 years back, we had 15 schools with priority improvement or turnaround rating. Another 2 schools at that time were at the cusp, right at that threshold of priority improvement turnaround. Last year, we reduced that number to initially 9 schools. 2 school designations, Audubon and Columbia, if I remember right, were appealed to CDE for reconsideration, and that was granted. So 15 schools were reduced to 7 eventually last year. This year, coming out of the CMAS state testing results, we have 5 schools with that initial priority improvement or turnaround rating. 2 school designations for Edison and Carver are going to be appealed to the state for reconsideration. When we file such an appeal for reconsideration to the state, we must provide supplementary data and information that corroborates our appeal, internal testing data that we have. And based on our initial review at Edison and Carver, it is the district's opinion that we have substantial information that can help us get those 2 schools out of that priority improvement designation. And the state will let us know if that appeal is upheld. But here's the good news. 15, we were 2 years back, 15 to 7 to 3 this year. And we are progressing in the right direction, but the goal is to get that number to 0. In the meantime, the board will consider 3 school improvement plans today: Adams, Galileo, Mitchell. And middle of October is the deadline to file the plans to the state. What was that, Director Jagan?
Jason's trying to do a sound check.
Okay, great. With that, I'll turn it over to Superintendent Gall to set the narrative for the evening.
Hello again, everybody. Congratulations to all the educators who continue to make the positive momentum. We're going to start with the USIPs and then we'll move on to the larger CMAS. The storyline is still continued great news for the district, but congratulations, welcome to the starting line, which is what you're going to see today is our poorest neighborhoods with our least effective and experienced staff are the places where we still have the greatest challenges, right? That is not news to District 11. That is not news to Colorado Springs. That is not news to the state of Colorado. Welcome to the United States public education system. What we want to start here with, I've asked Sherry to put together, and I'm preempting the Adams piece here. The data that Sherry is going to present here to start doesn't include Adams, but I brought the map out for you. That Adams is assigned to our central just because of the way we divided our schools out to make sure that we had the right number of principal managers per principal. Adams and Galileo and Swigert all go to Mitchell. Our feeder systems will show you, and you'll see some of these numbers when we look at Galileo and Swigert and how many kids go to Mitchell. This is a systemic problem of which we have managed to play whack-a-mole pretty well at times. If you want your kid to get a year and a half's worth of growth, no matter what grade they're in, be one of the 217 kids that attend two pre-Ks, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, and fifth grade at Queen Palmer. So you got a 1 in 8 teacher chance at Queen Palmer. It was probably more than that because there's a couple of double grades. Queen Palmer figured it out as a single school. But as a system, make no mistake about it, when Twain moves from turnaround to improvement, the achievement level at Twain is still way behind the achievement level in the northeast and the northwest parts of our state, of our city. So the underbelly of America is exposed now. I'm very proud of the work that we've done to go from 15 to potentially 3 with the right to review the other 2 schools, but we're only now at the starting line. How do we stop thinking about these as individual schools? Carolyn, who you're going to hear at Adams, came from West Elementary School, which by nobody's definition a year ago was a walk in the park. And walks in here and says, I had no idea how hard this was going to be. We didn't take Carolyn down from a school in this part of town. She didn't fly in from Cherry Creek. She doesn't drive down with a limo driver every day to get there. She came from one of our more challenged schools to walk in to a school where the underbelly, this has nothing to do with families or staff, the underbelly of America is the #1 indicator of student success is affluence of family. And this is the poorest part of our city. And you will see now very clearly that we're at a decision point as the district. Can we find a way to clone Christina Butcher? Can you make exactly what she has happen in one elementary school, mind you, 210, 220 kids, which means I don't even know if you gave Christina Butcher 800 kids if she could do it, because there's something about knowing every kid in the building. The problems require different solutions, but they don't require singular solutions. So I want us to be thinking today that Adams is Galileo's feeder, is Mitchell's feeder. Now, we had Swigert, and Swigert presented a USIP to me because we had indicated that Swigert would also be on the list. And then, state says they're not on the list. So that doesn't mean that we're not paying attention to what happens at Swigert. Because what we're seeing, I say this all the time, I always say David doesn't take the test. I'll switch it to George. George doesn't take the test. George does not take the test for the kids at Mitchell High School. But I promise you that when you see the number that Sherry's going to show you right now, you're going to say, how can anybody at Mitchell High School pass the test when they come in as 8th graders to 9th graders at 12% of them anywhere near the level of learning that they're supposed to be? So when you see that, yes, we can do this at elementary school, because if you're only 1 year off after 1 year, I got 11 more years to catch up. When you're 4 years off by the time you get to either 6th grade or 9th grade, the lift is greater than the ability to do it as a single school. As a single school. $450 million, 5,000 employees, 1,800 certified teachers. How do we get the power of the district? Some incredible things are happening, not just across the district, even in classrooms in the buildings that you'll hear today. How do we bring that power to bear instead of always asking it to get solved by one single adult responsible for 25 kids or one adult responsible for 25 teachers? Okay, go ahead, Sherry.
Okay, thank you. Really where we want to start this evening is that none of these schools that you're going to hear from are an island. None of them function as individual schools. They are all part of District 11. You'll see in just a moment, in fact, I'll show you now. Where do our Mitchell freshmen come from? Well, for the most part, they come from Galileo and Swigert. 63% of this year's freshmen at Mitchell come from these 2 schools. Mitchell's not an island. These students are coming to them from somewhere. This isn't about blaming the feeder pattern or the feeder school. It's about levels of support and wraparound systems that support all of our schools together to make sure that we can reach our goals. Data is going to show you some really clear trends and patterns across these 3 schools tonight. In just a moment, I'm going to show you some for Galileo, Swigert, and Mitchell. And in order to improve these academic outcomes, just as Mike said, we need to approach improvement as a district function of support and resource across the feeder pattern. And so, there we go. Just a quick historical look at where Galileo and Swigert have been for the last 3 years. And so we know growth for these schools is intrinsically linked. These are the same families that we are serving. These are the same students over time that we are serving. We have to change outcomes for all of them if we want to change outcomes when they graduate from Mitchell in 12th grade. Dave Colicky helped us put together a closer look at just one substandard that we consider when we look at student growth and achievement. This one is around writing achievement for students at Galileo and students at Swigert. If you're surprised or bothered by this data, quite honestly, we all should be. This is also not just a function of a single teacher or a single principal, but is a function of our school systems all the way through where these children start, sometimes with us as young as 3 years old, to when they graduate at 12th grade. Again, we have to address this data systematically. And there are lots of ways we're going to present to you tonight that we're starting to do that, to think about these schools not as individuals, but as a feeder pattern, and across regions of the district as well. Sarah and I have regular conversations. We did a lot of our prep work for this evening and in leaning into these schools' USIPs together. This was not an individual school or even an individual region as we prepared this work. Our goal is to provide every student with the highest quality instruction in every classroom across our system. And so the data that you're seeing tonight that we're all now absorbing shows that these schools need support from all of us in reaching their goals. And of course, that's our priority. And so we have a few up here on the screen. I want to give you a moment to read those. And then I have quite a few more that I want to just preview for you. You're going to hear lots more about these through the USIP presentations. But as you listen to all of these resources and supports, I want you to think about two things. Number one, the number of these resources and supports that cover multiple schools, that are aligned across schools, so that when a child leaves 5th grade at an elementary school and moves into a 6th grade classroom, some of the student engagement tools they see should be exactly the same. That 6th grade teacher should not have to spend weeks teaching new tools, because we've intentionally made sure that those are transferring across levels. So that idea of all schools together is one, and the other is really around what are the resources that are coming to bear in these schools. And those can look a lot of different ways, but I want to highlight a number of them for you. You have heard that the 3 schools that you'll see tonight are considered priority improvement or turnaround by the state. They're considered priority support by District 11. And what that means is that they move to the front of the line for central office department requests. I think many of you know I've worked in this district for a long time. And the way that things have always worked is you get in line, and there might be 53 schools in front of you, and there might be 3 schools in front of you. For these 3 schools, there's no one in front of them. These are the 3 schools that get what they need most quickly. Their needs move to an urgent response. Issues are resolved as quickly as a day or 2. Resources are provided without delay, and we get creative in problem solving. When we run into a no, we find another way. And we're really seeing early evidence of many of our central departments leaning into that. For example, at Galileo, we had an odd hiring situation recently that needed to work through grants. We were running into some problems. Talent management took on ownership of getting to yes on a hire. We needed to keep moving forward. We're starting to see more aligned supports for curriculum instruction as well. Some great examples that you'll hear more about: instructional empowerment and student agency tools across schools. Adams and Galileo both work closely with our instructional empowerment partners, and they use many of the same tools. When a child leaves Adams using a summary mat and knowing that they have to rely on their teammates to solve the math problem, they're going to experience the exact same thing from day 1 at Galileo. That means more instructional and learning time. They experience the same when they get to a math class or a VAPA class at Mitchell. We're intentional about this. StudySync is another example for Curriculum 612, where we are working to intentionally reduce the amount of time we have to spend teaching students new systems when they move from one level to the next. Learning should continue seamlessly. Our instructional coaches at all 3 levels this year are being intentionally coached by our area instructional coaches. This year, you'll hear about an instructional coach at middle school, but Mitchell High School also now has 3 instructional coaches. Those folks meet together with my instructional coach on a regular basis to lean into the work that TLCs at elementaries have been doing for a number of years. We've been asked for a while, who's coaching the coaches? Let's make sure that we're aligned and intentional in that. And so we've identified and adapted the resources to make sure that that's happening in an aligned manner across these schools. One of the pieces that we are just starting to implement is we have great teachers in every school. We also have a lot of brand new alternative licensure and J1 visa teachers in every school. And we have higher concentrations of new teachers, alternative licensure, and J1 visa, especially across these schools. That tends to happen nationwide in schools that are considered more struggling. And so we are intentionally pairing our best teachers at others, for example, at other high schools. I will be meeting with some of those teachers later this week to intentionally pair them with brand new teachers for mentoring at Mitchell. Julia has taken this very same idea at Galileo and has done outreach to North to start thinking about how we get North teachers over to Galileo to do some intentional mentoring, especially for our brand new teachers. The last thing we need is them floundering in a classroom for weeks on end before some other support might get to them. This is someone who teaches their same grade level, likely a similar population of students, and can speak to their exact experience and help them navigate day-to-day life in a classroom. At Mitchell High School, we just signed an extension of our text-first planning support. That's a piece that we are capitalizing on in our K-12 meetings for principals and in professional development for our teachers. Mitchell will be getting a double dose of that. We were able to identify a way to bring the exact same trainer to Mitchell for additional days for working side by side with teachers in lesson planning and unit planning, for doing classroom walks with George and his leadership team, and providing feedback about what they're seeing. So they're getting more and aligned. Zach Trendelman, who is one of our math facilitators in the district, made Mitchell his very first work in terms of supporting math teachers. He is out in the building already working side by side with teachers. When Swigert identified a need to support some new special education teachers, because our new Swigert principal was an assistant principal at Mitchell, she knew that there is an outstanding state-recognized special education department at Mitchell, and so she intentionally reached out for some side-by-side work for those teachers. The Mitchell teachers are coming to Swigert to work side-by-side with their special education teachers.
Do
you want me to stop? I
Yeah,
have
because
more,
we have a
but-
long list.
Yes.
What I really would love for the board to do is you go through these USIPs, please tell us, the direct feedback, but think at the policy level. What could the board be leaning on differently that breaks this cycle? We have to break the cycle. The cycle, and again, it's not District 11. You can go to any district within Colorado or around the country. The poorest kids get the least access to high quality instruction repeatedly. The 3 schools that we give $5,000 extra a year to go to, before CMAS came out, Brandon, they are? What are our 3 schools we hire for?
Adams, Galileo, and Mitchell.
Adams, Galileo, and Mitchell. And at the end of the day, when the Yahtzee dice come out, what did CMAS tell us? Adams, Galileo, and Mitchell. We made that recommendation and that decision in March of last year. That came up through the IVB process. Not because we had indications that these schools would already be there, but because this is the feeder pattern of where choice is exercised least or without effect. Choice is a part of the world that we live in, and it is wonderful that parents get the ability to make that choice. But when a parent can't make that choice, the quality neighborhood school part of our portfolio has to deliver. You're gonna hear these schools and you're gonna hear these leaders put their passions on the table. Help me evaluate whether or not you believe that these leaders have the right plan to get there. But please then come back to us and say, what could we do differently that says, how is it that we're going to give out governor awards for achievement, and yet now, with all the incredible progress we've done, we're at the starting line that says, guess what? Adams, Galileo, and Mitchell, and there's a couple of other ones in there that just squeaked on by, but they're all in the same area, are magically the ones that the state says aren't performing. Walk into the schools, walk into the classrooms. People are working as hard as they possibly can to make differences for kids. But go back a slide. With the numbers. When that's the number that you're inheriting, and remember, we could have done it from elementary to middle as well. If it is a school that has been reconstituted or placed on the turnaround, last year we had the oxymoron of the gifted magnet turnaround school, right? Why would a parent go to a school that has said that it's failing from the state year after year? So the parents who can choose do choose, and it's on us, it's our obligation for the parents that stay in our schools to give them the highest quality that we can possibly bring to bear. I think there are policy levers for the board to be able to direct between how we progress kids in between grades. We have to look at this. You can't leave 8th grade if that's what you have. Now, you probably shouldn't have left 7th grade to get to 8th grade or 6th grade to get to 7th grade, and now let's back it all the way up. How does Summer Bridge become the thing that changes the vector for a kid, not the thing that allows the parent to have their place for a kid to go during the summertime? Okay, that's what I'm asking the board to look at this. Yes, you're supposed to tell us whether you think it's good for the state to review and all that stuff, but really think that the changes this board has made on just the basic ABCs of what we do for instruction to empower our teachers. What could we be doing differently as a system of 50 plus schools with $400+ million to now we're down to 3? I said it. I said we'd half it, and then we'd get to 0. I need your help. I need you to give me the directive that says no more shenanigans where middle school kids go to high school and hand, I can't even imagine anybody play poker. Like there's 5 different suits is what he gets handed. There's not even 2 cards in the same suit in a 5-card draw that George gets handed. And remember, what happens at Mitchell happens at every one of our high schools. It's just not happening in concentration. Look at the non-IB numbers at Palmer. Remember when we did that last year and we pulled out the IB students, kids who attend 1 IB class or more? The numbers for performance and achievement at Palmer were very close to the numbers at Mitchell. It's a cancer that creeps into the system. And it just happens to be that choice has created a lack of choice for people, and you're seeing this concentration. This is not an individual school. It's not an individual area superintendent. It's not a new curriculum. It's the power of policy to change that says we will no longer accept that happening, and what can we do to make it change? Okay, good?
Okay.
Thanks.
Yep.
I think with that, we are going to start with that.
And now we're going to start with Adams.
Okay.
And I had a few things to say to all of you. And
Sorry,
Keep saying
Sarah.
them.
they said-
Keep saying them, Sarah.
But really, Carolyn and Kathy stepping in as new leadership at Adams, right? They came from West together. And there's so much in this data that none of us are okay with. That's what Sherry and Mike said. Our kids deserve a better learning experience, one where they learn, they grow, and they're thriving. If you haven't been to Adams this year, I encourage you to go visit because it really does already feel very different than it did last spring. The changes they've already brought, the way that they're supporting their staff and students, we're hearing from parents, we're hearing from community members that Adams is moving, slowly turning in a more positive direction for that experience for kids. So they are gonna talk to you really about the specifics of what is in the plan, a little bit about what they have already implemented in the first few weeks of school, but then really focusing on how do we make sure that as a school and as a team, they're creating the systems that will really change that trajectory of learning for kids.
Thank you. You are leading the presentation?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you can also introduce your
Sure.
assistant principal.
So yeah, I'm excited to be the new principal at Adams Elementary School. I'm Carolyn Graham, and this is the wonderful Dr. Catherine Melodzik. She's the assistant principal with us over here, and we are just, doing the
And
thing.
both of you come from West.
We do,
Okay.
actually, yes. And so TLC last year, assistant principal, and so we worked with instructional empowerment with context around that, and then rolling that over. We felt it was a natural progression to enter into, reach out to Adams and see if it worked, and so far, here we go. So John Adams Elementary School, you could see some students here speaking to the summary Matt we talked about earlier, but this is our vision. So John Adams is committed to a rigorous, positive, student-centered learning culture. And so what that means is that we're going to put agency at the forefront. Our staff creates lasting relationships, and so you'll see throughout our presentation that culture is also big for us, and it has to be in this work, as we all know in this room. So that's just the line of defense. We have to do the Maslow before we get to the Bloom, and we're really trying hard to get there. And then standards-driven instruction, we have got to be intentional. That word's come up a lot tonight already too. And so our purpose here is to eliminate poverty that's going on through generational cycles in our community and just racial achievement gaps. And so we're fighting that barrier when kids don't have choice. And so our neighborhood school fill, we do have 338 kids that are being serviced at Adams. And so that's our intention in every classroom and through our whole system. Through building the agency, we are excited to say that 100%, this is a big celebration for us, 100% of our students are all grouped in teams, student teams in the classroom. It's not just grouping. We are following all of the procedures and structures that we're setting up to allow students to really engage in those processes and let them become agency or increasing agency in their learning. And so they have tools and the resources. So all of the pieces that are allowing them to increase just overall agency and being student-centered. This is another big celebration for us. This year we are 100% staffed in all teaching positions, so yay! We have 16 classrooms that are servicing students in the pre-K through 5th grade setting. We have 5 essentials, so we have 5 subgroup teachers and support staff. So totaling of 30 for us, 12 of those are new to Adams, so 40% of our staff that serviced students are new. 38% of those 16 teachers, so 6 of them are brand new to teaching the profession in general as a whole. And so we do have a wide range of novice teachers all the way up to professional and veteran teachers as well. And so our teachers here, you can see they're engaging in some of the processes as well, so we could take those to the classroom and filter those through the system. Our data story here, when we look at this, it does align exactly to the schools in front of us. We were not on the previous screen, but we do have 13% of our students scoring in math and reading our ELA at the moment at grade level or higher. And so we do see in our story that when we unravel this a little bit more, that we have a decrease in growth and achievement in all grades. Our big area is we had 75% of our students scoring a 0 on the writing component of CMAS, and so that's a big hit for us. And then we do have, in reading and math again, we're below the state average, so not only that, but in DIBELS as well. When we went a little further with Dr. Colicky, we looked at this and we discovered that when we looked at subgroups and populations and cohorts across from year to year, from 2 years ago to now, our 4th grade group was the group that did take a decrease, a loss, and so they did reduce our score, but with that said, they did not have a teacher for half of the year in one classroom too, and multiple subs. And so we did have some factors that did contribute to that, we feel, when we did some root cause work with that. But we do have 2 teachers in that grade now, and those kids carrying on. One of the movements we're going to do or try is our action step is to take that 5th grade class. It's pretty large by nature, but it does have a lot of need, social emotional components that we need to address. And so we're trying to break that into 3 classes right now, and we took one of our FTE to move it. So that's posted currently to try to reduce that to meet the needs, the social needs our class has, in addition to the academic needs. So again, 4th grade, we're addressing that 13% of students scoring at grade level, matching our cohort here. And then K through 3, looking at our DIBELS, we also have a significant below grade level population that we're needing to service with approximately 122 to 125 read plans at the moment. So the plan to go through that is to develop stronger systems. So through our PLCs and our data, that's how we're going to go through that work. And that is something we've already started to do. We are developing observations, coaching, and feedback cycles. with our IE team, with our TLC, and with our district wraparound support services. We also have flipped our intervention model, which we've had to do based on the number of kids reading below grade level. And so we're taking, since we have a wide variety of teachers that are qualified in the realm of being qualified by definition, we're really investing in all of those teachers to get everybody to be that qualified, but we're flipping it so our classroom teachers are the most qualified and they're the ones servicing the larger bulk of children, specifically in reading. So we're taking that reading system and we're gonna do a foundational reading intervention across all K through 3. It's called UFly. We're excited about that, so we're engaged in that work as well. Our data story when it comes to our culture, we did see a big dip in safety. It dropped 30 points in supportive environment. So we dug deeper in that, and after with our ILT team, looking at that, kids they're telling us they're not feeling safe in the halls, around the school, at recess, they're not feeling support from their peers, and they did not, and this was taken last year, mind you, they did not feel that they had student-teacher trust. And so those are the pieces that we took forward in the work that we're doing now, and we've created systems and structures to support that and enhance our culture dramatically, and we're starting to see the effects of that, and Sarah did speak to that a little bit too. And also, our goal is to be an organized school again by that rating, and with the work from instructional empowerment, the 2 areas that students rate are supportive environment and ambitious instruction. And so our goal with our teaming approach will be to get students to realize that and also activate those scores for themselves and advocate that that's what they're experiencing. Major improvement strategy number 1, the big rocks there are PLCs through intentional data reviews and analysis, and then we have coaching cycles. So those are the big 2 rocks that we have there. We're doing that through we have wraparound services for sure. We've utilized several people in the district already to come in and support us, so that's amazing, thank you. And then major improvement strategy number 2, culture and safety. So previous slide, we are addressing the pieces that come with that. One of the big pushes that we have here, when our MIS 1 starts with leaders will, and so that doesn't mean just the 2 of us sitting at the table, it means everybody. So we are trying to increase our collective efficacy. It has an effect size of 1.57 with Hattie's research. When we are all being considered leaders in this work, we have to do that work. We can't do this alone. And so we're trying to elevate the capacity of everybody in our building. So by doing that, one of our action steps have been to create 3 committees that we've asked everybody to contribute to and divvy out at the grade levels. MIS 1 is all about BFI and our ILT team. And so our actions there, we are gonna be focusing on the why, going back to that constantly, the research that we're doing, the student teaming, and all of the pieces that were our data, bringing it back to the sense of urgency, and this is the why we're having to do this. Also with embedded planning, we've given teachers now 2 days a week where they get to come out of the classroom for 45 minutes a day, and they are given coverage, or it's a system that supports the work where kids are also engaging in work during that time, but teachers are allowed to plan in addition to PLCs to support that work, so that's been nice, a value add for us. And the design of the PD, this all still aligns to committee number 1. This has been a huge, already in 6 weeks, we've seen a dramatic increase in just the teachers leaning into professional development. So we have power of student teams we're working with. We also have our module 101 and 201 we're doing. This Saturday we're gonna do all of 101 together. So that'll be great. And UFly, we're training on UFly. We're doing a Wolfpack Academy. So every Tuesday after school for 2 hours, teachers are coming and they're divvying out. K through 2 goes to one setting and 3 through 5 goes to another. So that's been phenomenal because it's aligning to our work as well as what we've seen in our data. So writing, for example, 75% of our kids scored a 0 on writing. So we had Natasha Krause come out and run her professional development session that she's done. She did it at West. It's very powerful. So they were already able to look at the steps they're gonna take to address that in the classroom. MIS number 2, Social Emotional Cognitive Learning Committee, the SECL. That committee of teachers in our building are working through our HAL. We had to realign our whole PBIS system. Our last PBIS system didn't speak to teaming at all, and so we said that's just not really who we are. So we had to come up with something that we valued and that we could identify with as a teaming structure. So that's exciting. So it's have a positive attitude, own your actions, work in teams, and learn respectfully. So kids are already chomping at the bit. We're working hard to get those tickets out and buying into that and showing it in their daily activities. And then we also have just SECL in general at this level of where we're at is a focus. We can't say that it has to be second. It really has to be first for us to get into the academics at our school. So we are working hard. I've reached out, we're partnering already to get with Dr. Schulte to see what we can do to up the ante on that. MIS 3, we have attendance and family and engagement to support the district initiatives with attendance, behavior, and then family engagement for us. Yeah, so that's.
So just clarify, they only have 2 MISs, but they have 3 committees because really the attendance and family engagement and social, emotional, cognitive learning are MIS 2 together, but there are discrete parts to that work, so they've broken it into a 3rd committee of staff who's working to bring that forward.
And then based on that, around best first instruction, just some images of some initiatives we're working on. You can see our schedule, we value, they say what you put in your schedule is what you value. And so we are showing that we do value the teacher's plan time to be very intentional about that standards-driven instruction and to meet the needs of our MIS 1 that we've called out through planning. And so data analysis, and then also we're just being very, very structured in how we're going to make sure we're progress monitoring, we're having our data points, we're asking teachers to plan at a deep level, we're having alignment to our calendar, so clarity is kind. And so we're trying to be very intentional and very clear on what we need them to do. And the workload is immense, and so just making sure we can help guide that way for them so there's no loss there of what we're doing. This is one of my favorite slides. Based on all of that, our plan of action here is we have taken that flipped model with our PD, and through the staffing initiative program, we are able to offer those 10 extra PD sessions throughout the year. And so utilizing some of those, our K through 2 teachers here, some 3, we're splitting them out, are engaged in the UFly program where they're learning how to do sounds. And so not only, we've all done the READACT training, but we weren't seeing that in classrooms. And so we're trying to say, how are we gonna take that to application? And so this also emulates our coaching model. So we're teaching them to do this. They're gonna go teach it in the classroom. We're gonna go observe it in the classroom, and we're gonna give feedback on it. So we're doing this as a whole staff and as a cohesive cohort of teachers in K2. And we're finding that now they can go watch each other. We're offering peer-to-peer classwork. They're coming in and practicing together. It's been so fun. That's pretty much all of that one right there. And then here are the students doing that. And so here again, we're going in the classroom, we're seeing what they're doing in their professional development, so we can recap that for them, and then we can give feedback and move the needle quicker. As Mike said, we have to, in our school, growing at an MGP of 50 is just not gonna work. That's only 1 year. We have to grow at 1.5 years, so we're looking to be in that 65 MGP range. And we can get there, but we have to be intentional, and every minute matters. And so we're doing these pieces here. This is where, in our win time, we're taking those kids, and because if 80% of our class is not reading at grade level, the teacher is now teaching this to that larger group and pulling out the kids that might be a little more advanced in that flipped model. Through culture and climate, we're addressing some of these pieces. So we really want to identify with being an Adams wolf, and so we're doing howl outs, giving howl tickets. What our goal is a semester to 100 positive calls home, and so we're tracking that. To buckle down on safety, we have hall passes now that are color coded, so if I'm in the hall or Kathy or anybody, we can say, oh my gosh, you have an orange pass on, you're going to the nurse. So we want kids to feel safe, we want teachers to feel that we are honoring that system, and that people inside the building and out are all in agreement that kids are in the hall for a certain purpose, and that's not where we're going to have any mishaps or behavior problems. We are also using random acts of kindness at the moment to increase that. We have Capturing Kids' Hearts we're rebooting. And so, yeah, we are really trying hard to get at the heart of the children. We want them to feel safe and valued and loved. And through that work, it's gonna take a little bit of time. Having 40% of your staff be new, they see a lot of new faces. So we did anticipate that there might be some push at first. So we're seeing that, and we're hoping to get over that hump here soon, and it's already working there. We know names, they're knowing names, we're having connections. So we are really getting creative on continuing to build these plans and add to them on what we're going to be able to do to foster a safe learning environment as we move forward. In support of the district, so attendance, behavior, and cell phones. Again, we're taking attendance very seriously, so every day we are tracking that on the door. Once you build your wolf and you spell attendance, we're having incentive parties, and we're communicating that to families. We're gonna dig deeper into what we are, or who are our families that are not coming and why. And really having to use our resources to get at that wraparound service. If you need a ride, how can we get that ride? Who's gonna take the safety bus training? How are we gonna get these kids to school? Are we meeting at the corner with our umbrella and you're walking with us? We're willing to go that extra mile to do that. Using our behavior flow chart, so really asking the teachers to dig into this and track intervention 1, 2, and 3 before it does come to us, so they can help foster that relationship within their classroom and build those structures. And cell phone logs in the office and elementary, we haven't had any major issues with this so far, thank goodness. But we do have a system in place just in case a parent has to come pick it up and it's not where it's supposed to be. But they've been very respectful of this policy so far, so we're very grateful for that. And then we did have some DAC feedback that we're going to add into our UIP so we can move forward with this. And also not on there, but something that we're going to do is really try to get the SAC up and running and the PTSCO for our community to bring those in as well. And so we'll be attending that training here in September and trying to get our family on board and go from there. Favorite part too, we've had nothing but support, so thank you so much. We do have Sarah's been amazing. We have Jen Wood as our instructional coach with IE. We have Leslie, our AIC. And then with this linear system and waterfall of coaching, we don't want our teachers to feel overwhelmed and have 18 people in their classroom. So we have to be intentional not only about planning and instruction, but about our coaching system. And so Carol Fry's come to sit with me and help me already as well. We have data coaches who are doing our PD coming in. We've already had our math coach in classrooms for our new teachers. It's been amazing. People are reaching out, what can I do? We've had Christine come in and help us dig into our data, breaking out STAR, teaching kids how to be grouped for our teachers in 3, 4, 5. Nothing but immense help here. Teachers, we've been coaching. Our TLC is amazing. We have a new interventionist who's also coaching teachers through PDSA and her intervention team. The dean is coaching for PBIS and CKH. We have teachers coaching teachers. Nancy's already come to our school and introduced herself to a couple of teachers. And peer-to-peer is our goal to get there next, because we do believe in the power of the teacher, that they are the front line and they are the most critical piece to moving our students. So here we have 2 amazing teachers. We have a veteran teacher at the top and we have a novice brand new teacher from California on the bottom, and they're both doing the same work in the same week. And so emulating that and just that being the message through our system is what we want to do. So you can see our kiddos are already engaging in our teaming work, and they're already set up. So yeah. Thank you. And one celebration already is Coach up here. We worked with Dix, and he's already been gifted the Sportsmanship Matters Award, or grant, should I say, for $5,000. And we've had a great open house and turnout. And so, brand new teacher in the middle, Fatima Stanzel, she's amazing. So yeah, there's a lot to celebrate at Adams, so we're excited.
Sarah, I'd like you just, before we open it up for questions, just stamp and or highlight the application piece. Carolyn talked about it's not just the PD, it's how we ensure that the PD lands in the way it can land. That, this balance between here's what we need you to do, and it's not like this, but we need to see some evidence that we're moving.
I think that what we've seen so far is the specificity of setting those expectations around what are you learning through the instructional empowerment and the teaming, and then those phonic and phonemic awareness skills. So creating the small implementation expectation and then creating that cycle for coaching and observation and feedback is making that manageable, so that Carolyn and Kathy are creating a really good kind of through line of expectation from what do you learn, how do you plan for it, how do they see it in action, and then how do they give feedback, so that cycle is continuing to go.
Okay. So thank you for making the presentation, and I'll open it up for questions, but before that I'll make a comment. And this is not only applicable for you, there are other principals out here that are going to follow you, so I'm not going to repeat this every single time. I appreciate all of you coming here today. This is never an easy conversation when you have to come publicly and look back at what are some of the things that did not work previously, and what are the future opportunities that are there. And especially for the both of you, you are stepping into how would I say this as politely as possible, somebody else's mess might be, because this was not of your creation, but you are trying to inherit what you have been handed but take responsibility, take ownership for this, and then proceed forward with a robust plan that is going to help improve student achievement there. So thank you for coming and making this presentation in front of the board, and we'll open it up for questions. I've got some thoughts, but I'll defer to the board first, and any thoughts or comments on what has been presented. Let's focus on Adams first, and then at the end of the conversation, to what Superintendent Gall brought up, is there anything at the policy level that we can address through this pipeline of Adams, Galileo, Swigert, and then Mitchell? Go ahead.
Okay, just maybe we wait on that last part of the conversation until the very end.
Yeah, that's what I
Because
meant.
somebody has to, okay.
That's what I meant. Let's focus on just Adams first at this point in time. That bigger picture will be at the very end of after Adams.
All three?
Are presented. Any comments or feedback to the Adams?
I'll go first.
Yeah, go ahead.
I appreciate the comment about the MIS 3 because I saw it mentioned a couple of times and then going into the improvement plan, it's like, where did it go? And I was also just did a quick search on 5E because when you talk about improving the culture and climate, you know you're making progress, and if you want to make adjust, I did see, and if anyone else is curious, you are going to do mini surveys with your 4th and 5th graders?
Yes, because you can pull those specific questions out and then we can administer those quarterly so we can get a pulse on where they are.
Okay. And I'll send a couple of like just minor things to you through Mr. Gall probably, but the other feedback I would give you is when I look at your strategy coverage here in the it looks like you've accomplished everything. Congratulations. A little sarcasm, but it's your date range and frequency, your critical actions that to achieve the desired outcomes. A lot of it is in August, so it's obvious you've been busy. A lot of it's in progress and on track, but there's nothing for the rest of the school year. So it just feels like pretty much accomplished everything. So I would be curious to see more, or maybe CDE would be, what else is in the future.
Perfect. And we talked about that, thank you. And so we were talking about maybe adding like a 1A, a 1B, and a 1C part to that because we have found we had to dip our toe in the water and see where we were. And so a lot of that is now stemming off of the byproduct of one thing is now led us to another. And so we will have to make some changes and some additions too because we definitely have more work to do, you are right. So we will adjust that.
And we recognize too, some of those are some of those cycles we were talking about, and we haven't split that out into like when does that cycle occur again, so it's represented across the year.
Yeah, that would be great to know, and it makes perfect sense that there will be repetition and refinement, so yeah, I just appreciate that.
Thank you.
That's it for me.
Okay.
Sorry, I have a cough. It's just a cough. So you were speaking to additional time for the teachers, and can you just sort of dig back into that and explain how you're able to give them that extra time?
Sure.
Is it extra staff coming in, or how are you doing that?
Is that embedded planning that you were talking about?
You said, I think that there's an extra 45 minutes.
Is that the
a
embedded
week
planning
or a
time?
day?
It's the strategic initiative as part of that. And so we have 2 days back-to-back, 45 minutes each day. And so it's we're calling it the STEAM rotation, but we have a STEAM lab that we're trying to reboot in our school. And so if you're a teacher, and we're making pivots on this right now as well, it's adjusting, but we had 3 sessions. So we had the RAC, like the counselor was coming into one session at one grade, or one teacher at that grade level. Then you would go to the STEAM lab, and then you would have Zern time where our roving sub that was granted to us through the staffing initiative would come in and cover that class. So it frees up those 3 teachers. And so if there were 2 teachers, they'd break part of each of their classes into the third to make that third. But what we're finding is due to the need and what our students need at the moment with SECL, we have to relieve the counselor to pull back off to be a free person that can handle any crisis that might occur at the moment. And so we're gonna go back, we're gonna do it with 2 now. And so if it's a 3 grade level class, we're gonna make them go into 2, and they will go to a STEAM lab or Zern.
So outside of the PLC, they're coming to this and they're able to plan with Susan or TLC and or plan with each other so that they're able to make sure that they are meeting all the needs and planning with the standards in mind.
Yeah.
Without sitting up till midnight or doing it on the weekends. And that is also helping the climate and culture.
Absolutely. So that's, did you say twice a week they get the extra 45 minutes? So 2 days out of the week they get an extra 45 minutes, every grade level staff?
Yes.
That's wonderful. And is that, okay, so I was looking at slide 9, so that's the strategic staffing initiatives
It's
to
part of it, is that, yeah,
to offer out sessions outside of contract
So,
time, or that
no.
Well,
different?
that's 10 days outside
Okay.
of that.
Oh, okay.
so that's the after, where you can talk about how you're doing it.
That's the
We're just so
compensation,
excited.
additional
So we were granted a
compensation.
rover and then you're given 10 days to, outside of contract that you can use for professional development. And so like this Saturday, we're gonna take an 8 to 4 session all day and we're going to, since we have so many new staff, 40% where the school should have been with instructional empowerment, the teaming piece, we're a little behind, so we have to accelerate at a rate that's, or a quicker rate that's gonna get us to where the other schools in that initial cohort are.
Mhm.
So it's 101, 201, and then 301. 301 is going to launch in January, so our task in our ILT team, we're going to be moving quicker to get through 101 and 201 again. So even though we do have some teachers that have done it, they've made some revisions to their platform and through that PE model through instructional empowerment.
Okay.
So they're modules that are paced, self-paced typically. So that will become our school-wide professional growth plan that we will all accomplish 101 and 201. And then you have to engage in the learn part and also the implement part to earn the badge. And so we're gonna do the learn together, then they will go implement, and then we'll move into 201, everybody will learn, then they will go implement, and then we'll be ready to launch 301 in January with the rest of the cohort where we all
And
are.
that's focused on the new staff? Is that
It's
what you said?
everybody,
Oh.
because they did the badging system now, they did not have that last year, so we're gonna ask everybody to engage in that all over again, because they're gonna be the mentor peer of that team and that group to lead that charge. But it will be done together versus self-paced, so they're not gonna go sit in a room and do it alone. We're gonna do it together, we'll have breakout sessions, we'll be using our summarizing mat as a staff, modeling it together. Everybody will take their notes in their system, and we'll all complete that learn part together.
I just want to catch up. So this is the instructional empowerment model that they use on how they drive what had been intensive support schools. Carolyn came from West, which was one of those schools as well. In Adams, which was also an IE school, we didn't have buy-in from the leadership team at the principal and the assistant principal, hence why we are now with a new principal and assistant principal. And so half of the staff is retained, half of that staff is going through a modified version of the training they received last year, because instructional empowerment has been improving their services as well to really drive some accountability into it, to make sure that we're measuring how the students are participating at a teaming level instead of just saying, did your students participate at the team level? So that the nuance that Carolyn's giving you is about the relationship that she's managing with one of our service providers for Adams.
So to, I guess I'm trying to get at the how of, we're bringing in subs so that the staff have the time to
For
go
the
do that.
Tuesday.
How it, that's what I'm trying to figure
So on
out.
Saturdays, we'll do that outside of contract,
Oh,
but
okay.
then since it all has to be outside of contract, what we're doing is every day at 2:45 after school, after dismissal is done, they come in for 2 hours every Tuesday, so they'll have 4 Tuesdays, that'll total their 8-hour day. So we're gonna chunk it into Tuesday sessions, calling our Wolfpack Academy. So we're going to break it into twos, but then when we can hit the Saturdays, when we can get a large amount of people to do that, we're gonna take that opportunity too. So yeah.
And I think it speaks volume to building that collective efficacy that the staff is willing to come on a Saturday.
Yeah, I was gonna say
The
that.
staff is willing to commit to that Tuesday after school, so that just speaks a lot to their understanding of the need to really
the
be learning and
importance.
to learn.
Yeah, so thank your staff for being willing to do that, really.
And that's a school level initiative that didn't come from the superintendent told the CAO to tell the area soup to say, if you work at Adams, you have to give up a Saturday a month. That's born out of the school leader driving in really MIS2, a culture that says, hey, how are we gonna do this?
That's great.
So it's appreciated to see that strong response from the staff. I think also of note, I know there are other questions, but when you saw that we're able to dive down and see the tenuous nature of how your school exists, on an SPF, especially when your SPF is driven mostly by growth. So a fourth grade teacher departs last year for whatever reason, of which many of them, sometimes people have life choices, and staffing is so difficult, not just in District 11, but in the county. A school goes from turnaround to performance to turnaround, really because a fourth grade teacher left, right? That's how crazy this world can be. When you are measured on achievements as much as you are on in growth, you can absorb that loss and find ways to overcome it, but you're really only tested in 3 grades, so only half of your school is tested, and if a third of half of that is gone, it says, if that misses, when you're measured on growth, remember, a performance school that is getting that SPF on growth is not out of the woods. You're still gonna end up with that slide of, it's not gonna be 12% of the kids going to Mitchell at performance level, it's gonna be 22% of the kids at performance level, which is still, I don't see anybody signing up that says, I'll take the high school where only 22% of the kids are at 9th grade level when they walk in the door, right?
Definitely. So the last question I have, and if you need to get back to us later, that's fine. I'm just curious how you're using your Title I funding.
Sure. A lot of that is salary, so we have 2 teachers to add to make up that 16, so we have, that's a large part. We do have, one of our intervention, we have another ESP. Then we do have our title nights that are in there as well, and supplies, but, the majority of it is adults, is
2 FTE, you said?
yes, for classrooms. And
So
then
maybe
an elite
class
interventionist,
size.
a certified reading interventionist, actually, as well. So basically 3 teachers, but 2 a classroom and then 1.
So is that to help make the class size smaller then? Or-
Yes, I believe it was because we have 2 grades that have 3, so we have 1st grade and 3rd grade to break those apart.
Great, that's all I had. Thank you.
We also talked about 5th grade possibly getting a 3rd teacher.
Yes.
But
And
that
that,
is not yet filled.
and not title, that's,
That's additional, maybe a strategic initiative funding.
no, just in the allocation.
Okay.
Kindergarten came in smaller and 5th grade has a higher need. We hadn't been able to fill that kindergarten, so we moved that to a 5th grade position.
I just had 2 quick questions. So the added Saturday, is that expectation communicated to teachers ahead of time, especially like new teachers that are interviewing to come to Adams so they know ahead of time there's an expectation of working a full Saturday in addition to their contracted hours?
That would be, we haven't had to do that yet, so. But no, all of that came after everybody was hired and when this was rolled out, because this came to us in, it was already August, I believe, when we started talking about this, and so in hindsight, it's a great gift and we can use it looking back, maybe to start the year strong and end it, continuing our year a little differently to wrap it up and reflect and plan before we leave. And so we're gonna look at that too and save some of those for the end, but if somebody was to come on board, if we need to do that, that's definitely something that would be asked of them, as is the teaming and our vision and all of the other pieces that go with it.
So the current staff, you have a buy-in from them.
They were able to also, we did surveys, so they were able to pick what day of the week works best, or if they wanted it on a weekend, they were given choices, and so the majority of them is what we went with for that.
And then the second thing is, I wanna make sure I heard this right. The number 1 priority is SECL, is that correct? Did I hear that right?
I mean, it's a huge focus for us. I mean, obviously achievement and growth are our BFI, our MIS 1, but MIS 2 is, I mean, it's right there
Sure.
because
I've asked Carolyn to look at the challenge when I shared earlier that going from West to Adams was like, you gotta be kidding me. What she said is that we don't have the conditions in the building yet for children to be able to learn. And so we went down the traditional conversation of, oh, we'll hire 1 more school psychologist or 1 more counselor. And what Carolyn has been doing with Sarah is flipping the equation of how is it, because we couldn't solve it that way. More kids are out of the classroom lined up for counselor support than they are in the classroom because of the way kids are showing up in the learning environment at Adams. So they're flipping the conversation into reigniting, capturing kids' hearts, along with some other ideas which have proven to be quick turnarounds for us in many of our schools, easily adaptable, easy to integrate inside the classroom without us going into a space where we're just talking about feelings all day and we're actually getting to the instruction. So the MISs sometimes show them in a way that could confuse that, but I promise you, instruction is happening at Adams in very strong ways.
I was gonna ask what does that consist of, but I think that's.
Well, and to speak to that, yeah, we do have 20 students that see ITSCO counseling services during the day, 4 days a week. And so that's large, considering the population in similar schools. We've partnered with them already and met with them to see if we can run after-school programs and have another person on deck. They have to be attached to Medicaid to do that, so I need names. And so I was gonna take those 20, if they're the ones that are needing, they have higher levels of need, could that person be on hand to help mitigate and problem solve throughout the day? Because, you know, sometimes they need breaks or to get regulated. And so also some play activity, we reached out to some people to come in during recess to do that. And so our unstructured time should never be unstructured, and so we're having to tighten down even harder to make sure that time is structured, so we're having to redo some of our pieces we've already had in place. So it's been this constant where you have to adjust, sorry guys, we're adjusting again, but we have to get it right. And so all of those places where we're having our safety concerns at recess or in the halls, we're having to address that immediately. And so it feels like instruction is not our first focus, but in order to get to that question, we have to get these other systems in place.
And so parents are on board with that?
Yes, ma'am. And so we are doing the kiss and go line, for example, we had to modify that situation to make sure that even pulling in and out is safe. And so they're very, you know, communicating regularly. Oh my gosh, today, I just sent one yesterday, kiss and go dismissal took 7 minutes, say thank you everybody for your patience, your you know, following our needs, putting the slides in the window so we know what kid is coming quickly. So just really just keep communicating the celebrations and they're honoring our systems for the most part, and that's all we can ask. And when you have 338 kids as of this morning, that's a lot of kids and a lot of families, and a lot of siblings. So it's
How many did you say? 338?
338,
And that includes preschool.
yes.
How many are you built for?
I think the gym says 380, but we're filling that at lunchtime too, so. It's a little hot in there.
That's the problem to have though.
It is. Yes.
Thank you.
There's a lot of demand in that part of town, and if we get Adams right, the investment that previous boards made in the redesign of that building will make it a destination again.
Awesome.
It's a beautiful building.
And I think you hear that in rebooting the STEAM lab, that was part of the original vision when we opened Adams, when the kids from Helen Hunt came over to Adams, and so to really have that part of the learning experience for kids is exciting again.
So, yeah, I'll come to you, to just provide some clarity, what Director Hafley was asking about, that extra work that teachers have accepted to do on Saturdays, they do get paid for it, right?
They do.
And
That's
that
part of
is-
that strategic staffing initiative, so
Initiative,
there's
exactly.
the extra money that comes with that.
And that's up to 10 days, if I remember right.
And I
Okay.
think the idea is we would kind of do 5, we would love to have had time before the school year started to do that. So as we look at coming into the second year, more of that may happen before the school year and after the school year. But because of the timing of it this year, all 3 of these schools are being creative about how to work those extra days into the schedule to make it really meaningful.
And I think that's the beautiful part about it, is you get to, now looking back, you get to customize it to what you need once you're on the ground and the boots are hitting the floor. It may not have been what you thought you might have needed, so I like the element of being able to tweak that and customize, it's been very nice for us.
You just circling back to the comment you made about the STEM programming, and I was wondering, is that additional FTE that your school received over and above what your enrollment requires, or were you able to fulfill that through your enrollment?
That's not an allocated position on our staffing allocation sheet. I think it used to be, and I don't know the history of Adams with that particular FTE, but if we were to fill that with an FTE, we would have to use out of our general pot for that. And so right now we're being creative in using our LTE, we're asking to lean into that a little bit, and so all hands on deck, and then an ESP from the title funding. So that person is also partnering with the LTE to make sure that that's happening. Is it happening enough? No, because it's on that rotation, and so if it's every other week, they're only getting to go once. We'd love for them to go every day. If I could turn it into a special, that would be a dream on a wish list for me, yes, and for the kids, because that is where they do excel, and that's where we can really get them engaged, what we need is high engagement, and when they're doing their teaming, that's the perfect place.
Yeah.
And so it's really the sweet spot, but we need to find a way to get that probably in the hands of them regularly, and we haven't done that yet.
Well, good job being creative and figuring out a way to still make it happen every other week.
Thank you.
By, asking staff to help fill in, and thank you to the staff that are willing. It's awesome.
And Carolyn inherited the title budget that was,
Yeah, I
From
kind
the-
of was thinking that was
there
probably
was-
things.
that ESP she referred to that's helping and supporting in the STEAM lab was identified by the prior principal as wanting to have an in-school suspension room. And I really appreciate that they have turned that into how do we provide a really positive, impactful learning experience for kids, and really trying to shift that. And I think that speaks a lot about the way we're thinking about learning at Adams
And
differently.
then the benefit it's having to the overall school, that the teachers can have more playtime too. That's awesome. Good job.
Any other questions? Dr. Carey?
I'm keying off of something you said earlier, so I don't remember the exact phrasing, but just help me picture this. When you say that you have a certain percentage of your students who are just not even in a place to be participating in class at all, what does that mean specifically? Does it mean they're acting out behaviorally? Does it mean they're depressed in class and they're not participating? Does it mean they're physically absent?
All of the above.
Okay.
Sometimes hunger, they don't come with.
And we've done a good job in the classroom of giving those snacks when needed, but we wanna ask, right, not assume, and so finding what those triggers are, but it is eloping out of the classroom, it is putting my head down, not wanting to work, just apathetic, problems with hands-on, unstructured, meaning the unstructured, when they're playing in their communities, a lot of times they don't have those norms to know what that looks like, and so when they get that free reign, it might just be a push, that's how they're saying hello, and it just escalates and snowballs, and so we're having to decipher what happened before that incident, let's figure that out, and is it coachable, and what do we do with that? So we've had over 10 suspensions out of school already, but like I said, we're trying, and we're using all hands on deck, but it's all the above, it's hands, it's language, it's, yeah.
Sleeping,
Yeah,
it's
a
not
lot of
coming to
sleeping.
school. And Carolyn referenced that too, like the kids who are chronically absent, really trying to figure out, working with the families to figure out what is the barrier, why aren't they coming to school?
But it
And
is just
sometimes they're
that
not
word.
coming to school because there have been years of us not asking them to come to school, right? And so what I appreciate, particularly for those that you'll hear from tonight, is the work can be so overwhelming. I mean, let's acknowledge it. We had a third of our schools on the priority watch list 2 years ago. That can be overwhelming, that conversations come up and say, disband the district. A third of them go to D2 and a third go to D20 and the other third go to D49. Like, when you get surrounded by concentration of failure, you have to commit to a system and a structure and take it one step at a time. And so the ABCs for us is a way that says attendance. We went over attendance today at Executive Cabinet. We went over the number of teachers in schools who are taking attendance within the first 10 minutes of the period. We have data on that now as compared to the conversation last year was 42% of the students are chronically absent. That's so big you don't know where to start. That's 9,000 kids missing 18 days or more. Nobody can be on grade level when 9,000 kids miss 18 days or more. So you take one thing and you start, and then you continuously improve off of that one thing. The concentration of failure is the thing that America has not addressed. The Title I budget is never gonna be adequate enough to handle, not the, 40% of the school needs to be free and reduced lunch before you call it an all Title I school. David, what's the number?
50,
60, okay, whatever the number is. And it is a linear relationship. Once you get to more than half of the school is whatever, behind, on an IEP, on a 504, is chronically absent, has behavior issues, title budgets will never get you there. Because the best you get from a title budget is a thing. You get a widget, you get a slice. And so this is when I keep thinking about the board saying, George is gonna come up here in a minute, and I think full certified staff were in the upper 80s, low 90% for staffing. That's tremendous to where we were before. But I promise you, particularly those that are educators, go spend a whole day at Mitchell High School in the classrooms and say, we need 120% staffing at Mitchell High School if we want to turn around the vector for learning for these children. Not because people at Mitchell aren't trying hard, not because people at Adams, because it's half of the teachers are new. They're never gonna get there unless we get as creative as we did. We pay you more money, we need more days. And you negotiated Saturdays. You said you took the majority, which means there's some people who are not happy about that, right?
Or just couldn't make
Or
it.
just
Nobody was
couldn't.
angry, they just,
Good.
conflict of family, whatever.
How do we put the power and the resources of everything we have around it such that that structure does exist? And so there have been times that we've been in executive cabinet and I pull up the 7 modern wonders of the world and people are like, what is wrong with this guy? And I go, if you can build the things that we have built, it's just engineering. We put people on the moon with less computing power than a Commodore 64. And now, now we've overcomplicated things. We have people stuck on the space station, we can't get them back.
But we want our teachers to believe that that they see that for what the research says, that 80% of kids, no matter what your demographic is, can read at grade level if the instruction is, intentional and is working. So to teach kids how to read is truly a science. It's not an easy task. And be able to drill down and identify, and so we're named today in PLC, we named our kids by name, who will we be moving, who are our target kids, and identifying them, but we have to know how to move them. The how is the hard part.
Yeah.
And so amidst all the trauma, and there is trauma, a lot of trauma. With all of that, your brain does change. And so we have to get past that, but we have to make sure we know how to teach reading. So we can at least say we are doing our job to the best we can. And so taking that science of reading and all of the trainings we've done and put them into practice and application and give our kids the best shot. It's the teacher. It's the teacher.
Just one last real quick thing. How do you handle language? I mean, what's your percentage of non-English speakers? You have a population of ELL kids?
We do. They're working on actually getting all of that solidified right now. Last year we had it in less than 16, so we did not get that on our SPF. But this year we do have more. We were up from a 0.5 to a 1.0 this year. So yeah, we're excited about that. And so looking at we do. And she's great. And so we're looking at, she's already pulling groups already, but if we can double cross our subgroups for year and reduced lunch, we're already in the 80s. That's most of our students, right? So if we're hitting FRL and we're hitting minority, or we're hitting FRL and our ELL population, then we can say we're doing good work for crossing those over.
You have a lot of ELL kids?
I think there was a slide on your
Yeah, I
school
don't wanna
improvement
lie to
plan
you, I don't
that
have the exact
talked about.
number, but I would be willing to bet it's probably 25 to 30 students.
And your tested
is in
grades
the-
are all.
But we're getting more, so and we've had fluctuations, like kids are coming and going right now for some reason this week has been
It says
in and out.
6.7% are classified as ELL.
Thank you. So, yeah, and right now we have about 54 IEPs.
Any other questions?
Seems like a lot.
Um,
On the IEPs,
It is a lot.
it's over
And
15%.
then
Our
there's a lot
district
in
average
fifth
is in the
grade.
10 to 12%, so it's not that much higher, but I think there's a lot of relationship between IEP and 504 and the challenges that Carolyn says that come in through the door every day.
So I do have a few quick follow-up questions. You don't need to go into details. What I'm taking from you is all the teacher vacancies in your school has been filled, and these are not long-term subs.
No.
Okay, because that was a problem at Adams last year with several long-term subs out there. And I have nothing against long-term subs. There are really good long-term subs, but sometimes having a teacher with ownership at that school that you can help coach or bring them up, and they are going to be there several years down the road at that school would help. I think I start there at Adams, and Burnley is the one that teaches fifth grade, and he was doing both classes last year at the same time. Kudos to him, but how do you teach 45 or 50 kids? And I don't know what happened out there that one teacher had to teach 50 kids. But there was several concerns, but I'm glad that you have filled those staffing vacancies. Community liaison, is that a position that's still open?
She came on board today, so she came for her first day today, so we're super excited about that. I met with Karen's here this morning, and we're getting our food pantry up and running.
Okay.
So yeah.
Great. You talked about that's a new teacher, right? Not the new community liaison, not the one that you had previously.
Yeah, D left, so
Yeah.
we have,
Right.
Aaron.
You briefly talked about the SACs and the PTAs.
PTSO.
Yeah. Is there any movement in that? Is it like, looks like you can recruit some parents to participate in that?
Yeah, being new, all of us I think we had our feelers out now, and I think we kind of know who might be good fits for that, and so we do have one associate, our employee that works with us that is a parent at our school and also who ran it last year, and so we'll be asking her to come back and support, but we will be looking for more after the training and get our plan moving forward. We will march on, and I do believe, yes, we will have, I hope 3, if I can get 3, that'd be great. And then the PTSEO, she also helps with that, and we're gonna get that up and running too, and plan our title nights and all the fun things, so that one, the BTSCO is in the works.
Okay.
And pairing with the MIS3, so liaison and
Committee 3.
them and us, so.
Part of a successful school, and I'm not saying anything new, is to get that parent engagement, and it is through these type of, it's much easier. Sarah used to work at Chipeta, and she would not have to worry about getting that parent engagement anytime, but you are working in a different demographics of school, so, but hopefully you can get that up and running again. Before and after school programs, how are they working well for you, like with enrollment, strong enrollment?
It is, we actually have a wait list, and so we did open it up to the AM session, and so we have a 6:30 to 7:30 morning slot. We have some kids enrolled in, because we're working with Leading Edge this year, not the before and after school program. So we went in with that 5 schools, I believe, that are doing that same program. And so yes, in the afternoon they are full.
And that's another opportunity to address some of the gaps that our students are facing, whether it is tutoring to them or helping them with homework. It's just not like daycare that we are providing. It is an opportunity to close some of those academic gaps out there. Last question that I would have is there anything that is missing that the board should be aware of that is you need? We talked a lot about surrounding you with the supports and resources. You do have certain resources that most other schools don't have, but you also have the needs most of the schools don't have. So that's where the title funding comes and the strategic staffing initiative comes, and also the compensation, extra compensation for the staff comes. Is there anything else that you need that the board should be aware of at this time?
I just still think it's still planning on how we're gonna hit those SECL needs to make sure we can teach and do the things we need to do for the vast majority that are sitting there. And so we're gonna continue to look at some options we talked about, if possibly funding our teachers to have game clubs during lunch and bring more kids in and cycle through their classes and get that relationships more just intense and more intimate, I guess, in smaller settings. So we're gonna continue to try to use our staff, but I don't wanna or just burn them out and wear them out on those fronts too, even though it's so important. They do need their time and space. So it's still trying to get creative on what we need, but it's going to still, we're just not there yet. We would love our suspensions to go down and all of those other pieces first, and so.
Okay.
Partnerships are also what we're gonna work with Lauren, I believe is her name, the district partnership director of partnerships, and so more resources for that.
Yeah, and there is a community behind you out there. I have been to some of your programs with your art teacher out there, is it Mr. Kohler? And he's brought community partners into the school for various initiatives, so.
And I know I don't know if this is the platform to say this, but we do have a lot of paras at our school that service, kinder classrooms, preschool classrooms, and SPED populations. Our liaison, they work really hard too, just like the teachers, and so the teachers are getting this staffing initiative, the bonus of $5,000 to work at Adams, but our ESP are not. And so that kind of created a little bit, I feel, it's just a feeling, it's not, we would like to honor them for their support because they do work hard as well. And so that would be another wish list, if ever, item to say thank you as well for all you do.
Many of them have been there 5+ years, and it would be nice to be able to honor them.
Okay. So as you progress through the school year, as you determine needs, you got an area superintendent, so please be in contact with her. the board has clearly indicated, even at the beginning, what Superintendent Gall said is, we have these 3 schools. Next year, the goal is to get to 0, okay? So, but that's not going to happen without the leaning in of central admin supports to your schools. And we are focused on improving student achievement. When you see some of the numbers out there that less than 10% of our students in certain grade levels are grade level proficient, that is concerning. And we want to make sure that those students get the help and the support, and you get the help and the support as we need, with the expectation that next year, hopefully, you don't have to come here. And I have seen, like, Twain was a school that came here last year and they were in priority improvement or turnaround status, and this year they are not. And Adams is another example where you guys were priority improvement 2 years back, and then last year you moved to performance. We just need to see that consistent level of academic growth and achievement at Adams. I wish you the best as you take on this journey. And this applies to all the schools that are up here. We have the culture that we want to cultivate out here is to put students first. And we are going to set high expectations for our students and our staff, and we don't want to take no excuses, high expectations and no excuses. So thank you for stepping into this and wish you the best. And I think you will be here in a couple of weeks when the board formally approves this. And I'm sure we will also, board members will also visit your school. 1 board member is assigned to your school, but Director Nelson is assigned to your school, but like what Superintendent Gall said, that priority improvement and turnaround schools need extra support, so maybe it needs extra board members to just come and provide that help and support.
Is that helpful?
Say no.
Well, Sarah said at the very
We'll get you a best
beginning,
made.
Sarah said at the very beginning that if you haven't been to Adams, you should come to Adams, so she threw out the invite out there. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate you.
And I just want to publicly say thank you so much for all you've done, Dr. M. You've been amazing. So thank you.
And please carry that message to the rest of your staff.
Yes. You're amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much. So, is the board comfortable moving on with the next one? Okay. Director Jurgensen, I haven't come to you. Did you have any questions or comments?
I do not, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So just for the record, 6 board members are here in person and Director Jurgensen is joining us remotely. The next school that we are going to talk about is Galileo Middle School, and Area Superintendent Callback is here to introduce the principal, and you can introduce the rest of your team that are going to join us up here.
Sure, I'm happy to introduce Principal Julia Scott, and she has 2 new assistant principals helping her to lead the work at Galileo this year. So I'm going to let her introduce them and jump right in.
So this is Fran Lindau, she's one of my APs, and Caitlin DiNardo. They joined me, we hired them in the spring, and so we've been doing work all summer. Officially started August 1st, and I'm really excited to have them. When I looked at the opportunity to have a new admin team, I really looked at what are my strengths and where do I need someone to fill in some support. So I'm hoping that through this presentation, you can see the work that we have been collectively doing and will continue to do this school year.
And Julia, if I can jump in just real quickly. Fran was our data coach in the Southeast region last year, so spent a lot of time at Galileo in a support role last year as well. Really knows the
Yes. So here's Galileo's vision. It is still that students will engage in purposeful, authentic learning experiences through integrated core subjects with real-world connections. I'm really excited about the real-world connections. I was able to build in these opportunities into my title budget to get our kids out of the classroom more. So they will be all grade levels are required to go on 2 field trips, one that has to do with social studies and one that has to do with science this year. We already were out of the building for junior achievement in 8th grade, and then we always did a whole school science field trip, but we need to get out of the classroom. This is a really beautiful place for our children to learn, and knowing where a lot of my bulldogs come from, they don't always get these experiences that we can bring to them. One great example is my 6th grade advisory teacher. Many of his students told him that they had never tried apple pie. And so isn't that crazy? So that was his favorite dessert. They were doing a share on their favorite dessert, and so he brought in apple pie, and they were the happiest little bulldogs I've ever seen having apple pie for breakfast. So here's our school. I'm really excited to brag about our students. We are pretty close to 90% of free and reduced lunch. I have a little of everybody in my building. These are numbers that were pulled actually in the spring, so my English proficiency numbers are higher. We went from 13 students to 30 so far. We do have a full-time ELD teacher, and we are in the works of hiring a part-time long-term ELD sub to support her. Celebrations, I was able to retain all of my staff but 4 last year. And the only reason that 4 left is 2 were remaining positions from 23-24. So 1 was an open 6th grade math position that we were able to fill with a math teacher. So we have a full certified math department this year, which is really exciting for our students. We also had a position, it was a GTT position in our general budget, and we turned that into a STEM position, and I moved one of my science teachers into that position. Then we just had 1 vacancy. My 8th grade ELA teacher moved on, so I moved my 8th grade teacher up, so he's looping with students, and then hired a 7th grade. And then in June, I was told that there's a little bit of extra funding in title, so I was able to hire we called it environmental science, but it's really family and consumer studies. So this teacher, Director Ott, you're gonna be excited, gets to go out in the garden. They're harvesting. We also, I talked with Jenkins and Holmes because they have a really strong electives program, and Jenkins shared some personal finance. So now students are talking about finance. We're going to talk a lot about health and nutrition, especially if we're in the garden because you can't grow Takis there. And so, so we're really excited about that position. With that being said, we do have 5 teachers that are alternative licensed teachers. Out of those 5, 4 are moving into their 2nd year. So they will be certified teachers by the end of this year, which is exciting. And then my 7th grade math teacher was a long-term sub that came in January. She was just a daily sub and said, these kids need more than what they're getting. And so she said, I'm gonna stay for long-term sub. And then in March, she's like, how can I be a certified teacher? So I partnered with talent management to get her into the BOCES program, and she's just skyrocketing, doing a really great job. But if you look at my staff, there are, we have 19 teachers that are experienced. Some of those probationary, it's just because they've moved here, and I'm really excited about it. We have a full core team. Our elective offerings are a little bit, I wish they were meatier, but we'll get there at Galileo. But special programs that I'm really excited about is now moving into the community pathway and bringing in community partners. Even though they haven't fully moved into our basement, we have been working really closely with getting in community partners based on needs assessment that I've worked on with joint initiatives. Right now, the greatest need for my students is mental health. We have Children's Hospital comes in once a week. That is a grant, and she is phenomenal but can't service all the needs of our students. And so right now our families have asked for that support, and even though Joint Initiatives hasn't fully moved in, they've been supporting our families with the resources that they need. We do have a larger ELL population, so my current ELD teacher has done a really great job really working with her schedule to make sure that she's having her own class with students, but then pushing in to support students, because we know that immersion is the best way for these students to grow and acclimate to the educational environment that they're just being dropped into. So that's been great. We still have Avid. And then I have a 0.5 gifted and talented teacher that I also share with Swaggart. Last year, she didn't get to do as much GT, so I'm excited that that's her focus this year because she was trying to support as a 6th grade math teacher as well. So we're really excited about that. With the retention that I was able to keep, we are now able to offer more after-school clubs, and this is just for fall. We did not have this at all last year. So the teachers have really gotten excited that there is stability, right? That's big for the teaching culture, and so now it's getting them more comfortable and doing things for children. So really excited about that. You heard from Adams, we also have the staff sustainability initiative, and we as a team, so I had a really large ILT and we cut it in half, and so part is my building leadership that's supporting with operational decisions such as how do we get these extra 10 days into our calendar, what makes the most sense, and then what does it look like and sound like when we plan those 10 days. And so I have a group of teachers that are really working on that, making sure that we are following master agreement and that we have buy-in from everybody. And then my ILT is my core teachers really focusing on the instruction. The community school pathway has created energy. My staff, when the state came out to do our initial review, asked about becoming a community school. And so that was really important to me, that if that's what they're looking for, that's what I'm looking for, that's our commonality, and we're gonna move with it. And like I said, I think that has played into the after school offerings that they wanna give to our children. Cause like I said, we did not have that last year.
Since you're on this page,
Yeah.
what's the D&D after school?
Dungeons and Dragons.
You didn't know that part?
I knew that, but I don't,
I
I'm
didn't know.
guessing MMA, is it mixed martial arts?
Mixed martial arts, yes. So my 8th grade social studies teacher actually competes and wants to travel out of the country. And so he's bringing it 2 days a week to our students. And then we didn't have enough students last year or this year to actually play football against all the other middle schools. So my PE teacher is having intramural flag football. And that's been a lot easier for the children because it's right at school and they don't have to worry about transportation. But yes, the teacher that does D&D club also does book club during her lunch. So she's pretty cool. The kids love her.
Before you go,
Yeah.
so on the MMA, I'm interested. Is it basically skills based? I only know MMA as adults participate.
So that's what he's starting. Like he's not, what he's trying to do is give another avenue for them to express themselves in a more healthy way. And the teacher that is running the club is Mr. Wayman West, and he's a very calming presence. And so it's really exciting that he's doing this for the children because they are super excited about it. So it is skills. He told me he'd really like to one day take them out of the country for a competition, and I was like, we're gonna slow down. Let's just do this 2 days a week in the building, and then we'll get there. But yeah, it's just skills for the kids.
I'm still trying to assimilate what I know and how it translates
You know,
down
he's
to-
doing it in the fitness room, and
I think
it's been 1 week. It's been 1 week.
I think one of the things that he really wants to emphasize is that there are proper times to use certain skills and that there is a lot of discipline and like a mental and emotional discipline that comes with martial arts. So it's channeling that anger and frustration in a healthy, productive way. Right? That's the intent of it.
And right now he's very much using that exercise room to help them kind of get the stamina and the muscle mind kind of body connection. So he's helping them do some weight training as well, which is really cool.
We have a mini fitness room that we use in the wintertime for PE class, but that's why he's alternating with the flag football coach because they are trying to do just some basic training and getting these kiddos moving.
It keeps them
That's
wanting
really
to go to
opposite, it's flag football and MMA.
It is totally opposite, right?
Whiplash.
But we've had so many students that are excited about it, and so we'll
And
see
it
what
makes them wanna come
happens.
to school then.
It does.
You
It
know,
does.
that's- It's
It's
part
at
of
the
that
end of the day.
engagement plan, like that there's more than just coming for the learning.
Are
Well-
they primarily boys?
No, I think there is a little female in there, right? What I find interesting, if I can
There's
be
a
honest
local
with
role model
this,
for her.
right, well, what I love about this call is this teacher's, he's like a sleeper. Kids love him. His class is really hard, his expectations are really high, and you would think that the students would just be like, ugh, but they love him. And so the fact that he was willing to offer this after school piece for them, they were like, Mr. West is doing it, we're going. So, yeah, come on by, his,
Yeah, we'll
his-
come out and check it out, but back to your presentation.
So here's our data. We moved up to priority improvement last year. We stayed in priority improvement this year. Unfortunately, we lost just a little bit there. I believe that excuses are nails that build homes of failure. So I don't want to blame it on the fact that we didn't have a math department, because the district did provide us a lot of support. We had long-term subs for each quarter. We had the math department coming out. Is it better to have a stable teacher in there? Yes, but we didn't just let children flounder 187 days. Are we gonna do better this year? Absolutely. We had a strong ELA department last year, so that really did help us. It kind of flipped for us, right? Like, we had a really strong math department before I came in, not such a strong ELA department, and so things flipped. But we always have high participation. This is our beginning of year star. This is where our work begins. So we last year spent a lot of time in our PLCs really becoming content masters. When you have a new teacher in every grade level that's building the plane as they're flying it, we have to spend time diving into standards. And so our work last year was becoming content nerds and really looking at best first instruction around teaming, and we worked on that through instructional empowerment. We are now upping the ante. Every single PLC twice a week, data is a part of it. Yes, standards planning is still there, it is still part of our protocol, but we do not leave without looking at student work and talking about the implications for what we now have to do in our instruction. We started with backwards planning from an interim assessment. So we know that STAR is,
What's backwards planning? I don't know what that means.
Okay, so what the teachers do is, so STAR is our interim, but we can't see the questions prior to giving it to children. So what I've asked the teachers to do is take their performance assessment from the quarterly overviews, and I make them take the test from the lens of that grade level. What are we being asked for students to do? And that's where we start our planning. So they take that final assessment, and now they say, how do I put the pieces together to get the kids to this, and this not being the most difficult thing that we see. So each question after they take it, I have them go in and I have them match the standard to it. And then we create, the district has given us a quarterly overview, which is a scope and sequence of the standards that we need to teach. I've asked the teachers to do a pacing guide, which is the next level of that. What standard are you teaching each day? And what data supports you spending that much time on that standard for that amount of time. We are now, through instructional empowerment, added another layer. We do rigor walks and look and learns. Look and learns is the coaching rubric. Rigor walks is the tool that just, is it a standards lesson? Do they match the taxonomy of it? It's not meant for deep feedback like learning, the look and learns are. We're also starting to put this work into Randa under unannounced so that we can have stronger coaching feedback cycles for teachers. It's the same implications for math, but our math department is now looking at using Dreambox Weekly to fill those gaps, because Tier 1 instruction is what's gonna move our students' growth and achievement, but we know that there's gaps. If we spend all of our time teaching those gaps, we can't get to Tier 1. So our team has been using Dreambox once a week to fill those gaps, as well as for their MSLs, the major work of the grade level might be taught in the first semester based on Eureka, but they have a whole year to make sure students meet that. And so we're gonna use Dreambox to still monitor the major work that was taught in the first semester to ensure that the students aren't losing the knowledge, but we're also not taking away instruction time from the other concepts that need to be taught prior to testing. So it was really interesting that Sherry started talking about the journey from elementary up till high school. So I shared this with our staff yesterday. We did a data dig. This is a journey of an 8th grader. They come in significantly below grade level. And if we continue to only work on growth, as you can see, they're not growing. Because what that means is we're teaching them at their independent or instructional level, which isn't always grade level, if we're coming in at 35% significantly below. And so our plan and what we talked about is that while we understand that 35% are significantly below in 8th grade, which could translate to 6th grade, we still need to put 8th grade work in front of them every single day and differentiate, scaffold, and use the tools that we've been working on with IE to help bridge those gaps so students can access it, so that we're not taking kids just 1 year, because that doesn't help when we get up to high school. It's the same thing with math. Their students are coming to us with growth, but not to a place where we're able to make huge gains. So again, the work that we're doing with the intervention through Dreambox at least once a week, so students are getting the work, and then those full 4 days a week on grade level instruction, the hope is that we are going to see that red box grow smaller and the growth and achievement in the green get larger.
You heard Carolyn say this at Adams. At all 3 of these schools, a year's growth in a year's time isn't going to do it. We need at least a year and a half. And so we need different strategies to get there.
So these are our rigor appraisal of results. So instructional empowerment was in my building 68 days last year, and we did 4 rigor appraisals. They are 8-hour-long days where we're going into classrooms and we're observing instruction, and then we're coming back together to calibrate on a rubric, and then create goals for 45 days, and then what's the professional development look like through staff meetings and PLCs. And so I put this up here because we spent our time implementing clear systems and structures for planning using a 4-step planning model that addresses standards, taxonomy of the standard, the task that is aligned to the standard, and then what are the structures for students to work in teams. As you can see, we grew. Because we spent so much time on standards, that's where we saw the biggest bang for our buck last year in our staff PD, our PLCs, and our coaching cycles. We're still working on the student engagement piece. I was hoping that would be a little bit higher by the end of the year, but we are bringing in a book study. Sherry has purchased the book for my staff, and it is The Power of Student Teams. It is a book that we studied as leadership in IE last year, just talking about why it's important for students to do the majority of the talking in class. How do we put structures in place for them, but also how do we make it so that when they're in teams, the task is interdependent. Right now, we've got kids just sitting in groups, working on the same task, but they're not actually collaborating because we haven't gotten to the place where our task says, you've got to do a little bit of this, you've got to do a little bit of this, you do this, and then we'll come together to work on it. So really, it's kind of like parallel play. They're just kind of sitting next to each other working. We did grow big time. So last year we were able to, in the standards work, show that every classroom was working on grade level standards. They had the target posted, and we made sure that if the target said that we're going to analyze, that was the work that we were doing. At the beginning of the year, we would have a target that said analyze, but we would either see students taking notes or students just sitting and working on worksheets, which is very retrieval. That's not what the standard calls for. So we defined as a school, what do each of these words mean. We used the Marzano foldable. We pulled that out. It gives them questions that are aligned to each of the taxonomy. It gives them products that they can come up with. So that's also part of our 4-step planning process. When we look at the taxonomy, we pull out that foldable. They all know what it is, and that's what they plan from. This is an example of one of my first-year math teachers that was on an alternative license. This teacher was the only teacher there full-time last year. And we went in September from not standards-based, kids were getting lectured, they weren't showing any learning, and they definitely weren't collaborating with each other, to it was a standards-based lesson that asked for students to do some comprehension work. That's exactly what they did. And then this teacher met the rigor of the standard. So we know in math, they have application, procedure, or conceptual. We also say, is that what you're doing? If the math standard is a procedural one, are they actually engaging in procedural work? And so through work with my Dean of Instruction, we had Phil from the math department coming out, and then just working with, at the time, my AP that evaluated him, the teacher was able to move and make big gains as far as standards-based learning in his classroom.
Question, so there's 2 different classroom numbers here to be changed, physically changed.
So no, but in my, I know there's 2 different classrooms. So when I observed him in September, he was the 9th classroom I went to, but then in the final one, he was the 2nd. Yep, he can't see, teachers can't see it, it's in my notes. Sorry, I could have taken that part out. So when I share this with teachers, we take off the classroom part, and now we're just showing them the pie, because they do spend time going, which one of these classrooms is mine? And really, the Rigor Walk tool is supposed to be that balcony view of here's where everybody's at. The Look and Learn tool is the coaching tool that we'll now use with the individual teachers, and that we keep private.
How many years has that teacher been teaching?
I hired him 3 days before school started.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And he just popped into one of the hiring fairs and
Last year.
yes, yeah.
So
Yep, and
he's
he's
in
still
his
here
second
this
year
year.
now.
He's in his 2nd year. And he had joined BOCES last year when I picked him up at the hiring fair. And so he's in year 2. And we're seeing obviously so much more content, knowledge taking place in the class. Now we're just, like I said, working on the student engagement piece. What I find with my teachers is they get stressed about letting the kids teach each other when they are so far below grade level. But if we set them up properly and have the right tasks, the kids are gonna fly. And so that's what we're working on. As a 2nd-year teacher, I think this is really great data and where he came from, because I don't know if a lot of 2nd-year teachers can say that that's where they went in less than 12 months.
And we're glad to have him.
I know, he's phenomenal. So we did move up in ambitious instruction, and that was communicated to us by both our teaching team and the students, which is really exciting. So everybody knows that we are leaning in hard on standards-based learning, and it showed in our data here. Obviously, we have some work to grow, but our celebrations are the ambitious instruction. Teachers appreciated the quality of the professional development that was taking place for the whole staff meeting. I also pivot quite a bit, and so every quarter we did surveys. What's still going well in PLCs? What do you need to see change so that it is more meaningful for you? Because PLCs are hard, right? It's hard to do text-first planning when you only have one 6th grade teacher. So we just kept pivoting, and so they did say that the quality of that time together was great, and then the opportunity to be able to work with each other and the support. So I think that's huge in a culture, especially when you're climbing straight uphill. When this is my DAC feedback and recommendations. So when we talk about family communication, I'm just gonna, if it's okay, skip into my MISs, because that's gonna answer those questions. So this first MIS is my Instructional Excellence Big Rock. It's all about using data to drive our planning. To create baseline, we have created a tracker for every teacher that has student data in it so that they can track their STAR data, their CMAS data, their MSL data, and then anything else that they find that they need for a body of evidence to go in there, and we all have access to it. We've also created a space for them so that they can write their learning targets, talk about the taxonomy and the task, so everybody can see it, and we can give feedback to them through that document in the moment. And so that's been huge, because before they were just turning it in random spots and we couldn't keep track. Having this tracker and putting it all in one place has so far been really helpful for us as a team. It's also been helpful for our central office supports that come in because everything's in one place. They don't have to chase the teachers down to find it. This continues to talk about looking at an 8-week assessment cycle. So what we've created is a PLC kind of assessment strategy where we start 1 week looking at the performance assessment, taking it, looking at what our pacing guide needs to be, and then each week we come back and look at the tasks we're giving them. Is that aligning to the rigor of the assessment that you took? And it's been really eye-opening for teachers. We actually had a science teacher over the last 3 weeks have an aha moment, and she's like, oh my gosh, when you made me take that performance assessment back out, I realized my exit tickets for the last 3 weeks aren't even close to the rigor of the test that they have to take in 4 weeks. And so she saw that on her own without us telling her. And that's the power of the trackers and this type of scope and sequence for our PLC. So we were able to make a shift and up the ante on those exit tickets rather than let kids keep going and then see that hardest part is the test, because that test shouldn't be the hardest part. The work that they're doing in those 8 weeks should be the hardest part. So we changed up the way we're doing advisory this year so that we can get more family and student engagement. We have advisory every morning. We still engage in the responsive classroom morning meeting structure, so there's still a greeting, a share, an activity, and a closing message. However, we believe that our students need a trusted adult in the building, and we can't assume that it's a counselor or an administrator. And so we're putting more emphasis on the importance of advisory being that's your family. And so we have leaned in on advisors that when we have tier 1 behavior issues, the advisor teams up with the teacher who's having the issues in the classroom. They call together with the parent so that there is a team wrapping around this kiddo trying to figure out how can we get you to engage in class? How can we get you not to use home language and use academic language in the academic setting? Through attendance, we have asked our advisory teachers that if there's a student that is absent for 3 consecutive days or more, they are making the phone calls home, because to me, even as a parent, it feels different having the classroom teacher call me than the attendance clerk or the principal to say, hey, where are you? How can I get you to school? We so far have received, there's some pushback for teachers because they said, why do I need to call about behavior in somebody else's classroom? But they've been doing it, and the relationships that they're building with their advisory students has been amazing. And we've actually gotten a lot of phone calls from families or emails that just said, it's so nice that we now have a contact, because it's been hard for us to get 7 emails from 7 teachers that my kid's having a rough day. Now you get 1 phone call, and we don't talk about every little thing that happened. We talk about how can this how can we get them to engage? How can we get them to come to school? So we're really, really, really excited about this piece. We are continuing to work on reducing our out-of-school suspensions. My Bulldogs have been a little territorial this year, but we have tightened up our systems even more because of it. And so there is always, let's see, I'm counting, 8, 9, 10, there's at least 11 adults in each hallway now, talking to children, monitoring how we flow through the hallways. We know whenever they group up, it doesn't work, so we're moving them along. We are very intentional in where we are putting people outside during morning supervision and afternoon supervision. David Allison and Robert Eastles have also been helping us by doing some drive-bys to come during before school and after school. Right now, we're in the middle of hiring another security officer, so our neighboring high schools have graciously loaned us somebody to come over and support. And so we're making some serious gains as far as positive school culture. We still do our whole school community circle, the kids ask for it. We still have PBIS and rewards for that, but we're trying to change the way we reward students. We don't wanna give them 10-foot pixie sticks because, you know, they were quiet in class. We're trying to look for opportunities for them, whether that's being able to earn maybe a free night at Skate City with their family, or we take you out to a meal, or something that's just a little bit more relational than the stuffed animals or things like that. The children still love it, but we want it to be more for them. We're really trying to build relationships and engagement with our families and get our enrollment up. So that's where we're at. Here's our central supports. I have a dean of instruction. Last year she was in my title budget. This year I applied for the extra funding from the superintendent's office because my title budget was cut. She is, we need her. She's an angel. I will always try to find a way to keep her. My IE faculty coach stayed, which is really great for the teachers because she can continue to give consistent feedback and coaching to my dean to give to these teachers since they're staying. And like I said, we have now a building leadership team that can support to collaborate on operational needs. And my instructional leadership team are mentoring the 4 new team, and then right now we're modeling PLC facilitation, and then we're gonna put it back on our instructional leadership team. I really wanted my teachers to focus on planning. That math teacher that we talked about is on the ILT, and that's hard for him to balance, being a brand new teacher, trying to lead a brand new team and learn his craft. And so we saw that as a need early on, and so now we will be in there to support facilitating those. And that's it.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate your presentation.
I do think it's worth noting the parallel you saw in the first 2 schools again, that the staffing initiative pay has us in a place now where we're not having to constantly send letters home that say you do not have a qualified staff member in front of you. And we're thankful every time we have an adult who shows up to help us, but we're over the hump right now in these 3 schools, as you'll hear from Mitchell as well, on just getting the qualified individual. And now we're getting the strategies of how do we increase the quality of the instruction with the qualified individual. And I think what you've heard particularly in the first 2 is that there is real collaborative conversations happening in these schools. You did not hear Julia say everything that Carolyn said. It's not exactly the same way. It is differentiated based upon an alternative licensure teacher having the most growth on the rigor walk that you're able to do, yet still having an acknowledgement that we can do him even better to ensure that he in turn can do students even better. But the bite-sized way at which Julie and the team, we spent some time together at the end of last week comparing sports coats. I appreciate the humor of the 3 ladies there.
We dressed up like him. So we were in jeans, sneaks, our t-shirts, and then blazers. So we took a picture, I'll send it to you.
But just the way that I know that sometimes we want things to be just, well, let's get to scale, let's replicate. There is no replication. The infinite level of differentiation, particularly if you just start with the student. Every student needs the algorithm to be a little bit different for it to land. We can manage a series of algorithms as a system, but seeing that the thread, the through line here is still the number 1 way to student achievement is access to high quality instruction. Here we have a set of partners that are going to help us in the community school initiative. But once again, the pass on of student failure, whatever be the cause, like we don't wanna spend all day long talking about how we got there, but whatever is the cause of a student comes in, you heard again for the second time, a significant need for foundational supports for children. A life-changing amount of time is spent in schools just on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And the other than forced placement of students with mass distributions of this is the number of kids you can have in a school, you're not gonna overcome that until we really get after it the way that the 2 and the 3rd school you'll hear now. This idea of character, this idea of values-based, this idea of every student being known and taking it to a different level. Not each 6 teachers calling about one student with 6 different issues during the day. One teacher owns that value proposition for the student. 6 teachers have to deal with it all day.
Totally.
But one teacher's gonna handle that with the parent. I do think the other thing to take back, particularly as we get DAC feedback, is the level of family engagement that we have in the schools that you're hearing about right now is not where it needs to be. Again, we're just at the starting line, folks. That's not a District 11 problem. Welcome to America. Magically, the people who come to a podium and say, this should not happen in my child's classroom, or it's the 3rd year in a row that I got a not highly qualified teacher in front of my kid, are not these schools' parents. We have to find we don't have to engage better. We have to find a different way to engage. We've proven that it's not who comes to the podium and who leads the committee. We need a completely different way that we think about engaging families that have said to us, we're not engageable and we're not interested in what you're offering. They are engageable, we just keep offering the same version of it with just a slightly different twist to it. So another thing for the board to contemplate as you now get the 3rd school coming forward.
Comments or questions from the board?
Did you say your Title I funding was cut?
Yeah, so we were supposed to have 383 students, and then on the count day we were at 303. And so Galileo lost about 140,000, maybe upwards of 160,000. We had the largest cut from our budget. Tamara Forrest called and let me know long before we had that meeting to give me some time to reflect on it. And so that's when I lost my dean of instruction from there.
But you said the district helped still keep.
I did apply for the extra 17 FTE so I could keep her, because when you my music teacher comes from there, my 0.5 GT teacher comes from there, and then I also put Avid, and those are 3 really expensive things that take the majority of my title budget. So the rest went to family engagement. And then when Tamara's like, hey, I got a little extra money, would you like a teacher? Yes, I would. And so I don't know where it came from, but we got it and I spent it and I hired the person. So, but I wanted most of the money to go to students getting out of the building. The rest of my money for that, Avid is obviously in there, but getting them on field trips and then the family engagement. Our spring carnival was a hit. We had over 400, we paid for 400 meals on the food truck and we ran out of food. And I've never seen that many people in my building. And then when you look at our open house this year, Sherry's been to open house obviously twice now. We easily doubled the open house of people coming to school this year. A lot of it has just been consistent communication. I mean, I send blackboards like crazy and I do a community newsletter each week. I find that families are more engaged when I send the community newsletter in the middle of the week versus on like a Sunday afternoon. And so just those little pieces of communication really upped everything.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And it was more than double, by far, by far.
Awesome.
What's your enrollment now? Like you said,
We are at 234.
did I get that number right? You said like
So, yep,
Out of how many?
234?
we have 234. My budget said that I would have 283.
How much is the school?
You said like,
700?
That was last year, so
okay, but you said like 384 in the beginning.
is what I was, that's what I was budgeted at the beginning of last year, was for 383 students. By count day in October, when they base title budget, I didn't have 384 in seats.
So
I
you
only
had 303 last year, and now you're down to 234.
Yes, sir.
Okay, any other thoughts or questions? Comments or questions? Director Art?
So I was going to ask, how are you engaging families and creating a supportive environment? And you partially answered that. Anything new and different this year besides the additional one person calls the family?
I feel like I'm calling families a lot this year myself, or they're calling me. My new 6th grade group is really, really involved compared to last year. And so I myself and my team have spent quite a bit of time when we see these high flyers come through for tier 1, we also check in later on in the week and call. So that's another way we've been engaging it. Families, I had a family come in today and the mom asked if she can have a job. And so what I really think it is just open lines of communication, being available. I also think it's the change in what our building looks like. Our facilities team has really cleaned up the outside. As you can see, they put flowers, like it smells good walking into the building. We've painted it, we've got pictures of the students up. It just is more inviting to be there. And I have an open door. I talk to parents all the time, and like I said, I think just having one person call has also made the difference, because when you're getting 6 phone calls, it's like, yeah, I know my kid's a mess. I don't need to hear it 6 times, right? And so that's been helpful. And we have them call also about the positive stuff. So that was a piece I missed in the MIS too. So our first charge was within the first 2 weeks, every advisor had to make one connection with a family in all of them. So the first week we were like, okay, at this point you should have reached out to at least 5 families. Now it's week 2, you should have reached out to these many families, and we have them log it in PowerSchool, and we learned how to pull the log so we know who's calling. And so I think that has also helped. Referring it back to, I know that some could say that that Randa could be used as punitive, but we're not presenting it that way. There's offstage behaviors and quality standard 2 around engaging families, and that's how we're doing it. You guys, we're collecting this body of evidence so that when we have your mid-years, we have your end of years, you don't have to talk to me about the offstage behaviors. We're reminding you every couple weeks, okay, now it's time to do this, and teachers have been rising to it.
One other aspect of engaging families, so for each of the schools, I was curious where a person can find information about SACs and PTOs and things like that. I don't see that on your calendar, and that's usually where I go first. So just a thought, if people are gonna try and engage. I assume it's in your Blackboards and your emails.
And my LTE just put a link to our own SAC page on our website so that I can upload the agenda and our PowerPoint, because I do have a SAC this year, which is new for us, and our first meeting is tomorrow. Okay. So Marion's coming out and she's gonna kick it off for us. And we are offering in-person and virtual at the same time so that we can meet the needs of the families. We're also offering it right when school gets out in hopes that we can grab the families as they're trying to pick up their kids to come into the meeting.
All right, and Parth just showed me.
Is it there?
President Melpack just showed me. It's right there on the front page.
It's brand new. She just posted it last week, because I just posted the agenda in my community newsletter last Thursday.
Okay. Well, the answer is scroll down, Julie. All right. I think there was one more thing. Not seeing it. I will note today I heard someone say special education student and not in District 11. Am I in trouble? Am I in trouble? Because if I'm in trouble and I'm not going to get punished, I'm not going to behave the rest of the day. And so your relational aspect, just calling once and encouraging students to rise to the occasion instead of punishing them. And I appreciate that, and especially like trying to earn something, that's motivation instead of the punitive aspect.
Well, and it's been interesting because one of my 8th graders was like, I don't want paw bucks, I don't want rewards, that's for elementary. So now we're calling it their bank accounts, they can spend their paychecks. And so, you know what I mean? Like that we pivot so that it makes sense to them. And I was like, okay, yep, you're a 13-year-old boy, that makes sense. This probably does feel a little elementary. And so that was exciting. Also part of our PBIS that I didn't put in there is leadership opportunities. A lot of my 8th graders that didn't get into web still want leadership. And so we're kind of teeing them up to start running morning meeting for 6th graders next quarter. It's something they have to earn, but when we are doing reentry meetings or they end up in my office, it's like, what do you want? I want to work with other people. I'm like, okay, great, let's clean up how you're acting so that you can lead this. We actually had 2 girls today take a bullying class through Schoology that's offered by the district, and they wanted to create a PowerPoint, and then they went down to a 6th grade teacher they've never had and asked if they can present it in advisory on Friday. So we're trying to take these consequences, and sometimes they do have to be punitive, but turn it into a learning experience so that they can also teach others.
That probably explains your suspension rates dropping, I noticed in your UIP from
Yes.
the previous year, so congratulations on that too.
Thank you.
Yeah, good progress.
Dr. Backus.
You mentioned that your SAC is fully operational. How about PTO or PTA?
Just talked about that. We actually did just talk about that because the mom that wanted the job, we were like, you'd be a great PTA president. So we're slowly getting them back in there. Yes, that is on there because she did actually was like, I want to fundraise. Like, how can we start doing some fundraising? So that will be something that I work on next.
And part of your leadership is at student council?
What we have is web where
I don't know
everybody
what that
belongs. It's like student council. They 7th graders apply. They have interviews, and then it's a team of like 25 selected, and then they pretty much are the ones that they bring in the 6th graders on the 6th grade jumpstart day. They run it. They put together our school dances. They do a special one just for 6th grade. At all of the games, they sell concessions so that they can fundraise money. They're gonna go out in the garden and they're gonna start doing some painting. And so they're just trying to find more ways around the building to show that leadership.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Hill.
I've been in this school, and those pictures on the walls throughout the school of the kids, it's very cool.
I love it.
For them to be able to, I mean, they're seeing themselves not in a mirror,
Great.
you know?
Yep.
So other kids walking down the hall see them. The counseling department, did you have any turnover?
No.
My girl's still there?
Yeah.
Oh, is it allowed?
I will.
Thank you.
I will.
One of my former students is in the
cool.
council. Yeah, it's very cool. So I think you guys are moving in the right direction, thinking outside of the box for the success of kids. It's really great to see. My only question is, are Leon Jesse's and BJ's involved at all? Because I know BJ's gets involved with Banana Split Day, National Banana Split Day, and half of that fee goes to Coronado.
Oh.
But you guys are right across the street.
Yeah. Right.
Now, the reason it goes to Coronado, in all fairness, is because the girls that work there are Coronado. So they're a bunch of thieves.
Right? No, so for community.
Yeah, I'm gonna hear about it, I'm sure.
So the last Friday of every month, we get together for community circle, and it's morning meeting with the whole school. BJ's has given me 100 free ice creams. And so we give those away as rewards to students that are nominated for either showing one of our core values of achieve, respect, or engage, or one of our 3 golden rules, take care of self, take care of others, and community. And Leon Jesse's gave $10 gift certificates. So we hit them up at the beginning of the year, but it would be a great idea to have them do something on one of my family nights, so I'll put that there.
What's really cool for me to see personally is that not only are you guys, data academically inclined, we all know kids are more than numbers. The fact that you are integrating life lessons in addition to academics, 2 thumbs up, man.
Thank you.
Good job.
In those pictures, we had an 8th grade family after continuation take 4 off the wall and walk
that
out
right?
of the building with them. Because it was their daughter, they're like, we're taking them. And so, oh gosh. So they like them too.
Any other questions, Director Gary?
Some of the stuff you were talking about with backwards planning, I didn't know it was called that. And like making sure your exit tickets and your assessments and your kind of practice tools are aligned in terms of rigor. Those are ideas that are coming from district PD, or those are your ideas that you're training your staff on, or where is that all coming from?
So it's both. It comes from data-driven instruction, Paul Bambrick. And so we used it quite a bit in my last school district. And I was a data and assessment coordinator for 3 years, so a lot of it does come from that. But we are starting it in with Sherry in our Southeast group. So what I have already started, we're bringing to everybody to actually look at backwards planning from the assessment. So it is research-based.
We don't have Director Jorgensen?
No, he had to drop off.
Okay, great. Few questions. You can make it really quickly. How is that cell phone policy implementation going at your school?
Cell phone policy is going really well. I mean, they're still out of sight, out of mind. We have children just deciding to turn them into the office. We didn't have a huge issue with it last year. Yeah, they're just like, you know what, I forgot my pouch. And so they just bring it to the office. And it has been. And so it wasn't a huge issue last year. We were concerned because they used to just leave it in their locker and we don't have lockers. But no, they've been following it. And if we find that out of the pouch, teachers report, we enforce.
I was there for your open house and you showed me that joint initiative, some of the construction that was happening. This was 3 weeks or so back. Where are you with that, with joint initiatives moving into your basement?
They will officially be there on the 13th. It has taken us a little bit longer to get the GTT room cleaned out because that was our robotics. There were computers in there, and so they gave us until September 20th. But the doors are up, the bathroom's ready to go. They're moving in. We left furniture for them. But yep, they start their painting party this weekend. And the fire marshal's gonna come in, I wanna say end of September, October, so we'll be fully functioning, hopefully by the end of the month.
Okay, and you are fully staffed at this time? Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, just as a follow-up to the joint initiatives, in the U, it says that they have a 94% success rate in assisting students and families through their wraparound services. I'm like, what does that mean?
That they presented that to us when joint initiatives came and the board approved it.
No, I mean, what is a 90, oh, you asked what the 94%?
I asked at the time that they presented to us.
Okay, well, it's still causing confusion apparently, because I'm like, what's that measure that families left poverty or that they handed a can of food to everybody? What is the success rate?
So when I met with Sherry Lynn Boyle and her team back in May when I started talking to Sherry and Mr. Gall about becoming a community school, we walked the school and talked, what is it that we need so that we can have these wraparound supports? Because I don't wanna just put a dentist office in the basement and have white teeth and still can't read. So we met again at that time in May. I was like, this is what we need. Well, we met again in July and the needs changed a little bit. It's not necessarily about the food pantry and the clothing. It was about the mental health supports. We're trying to get them to help us with before school and after school tutoring. We also have teachers that have offered to do that. Those are some of the wraparound supports we're talking about. Mental health is always the largest one that the families have asked. But I also, with some of my students that are having some safety problems, I've reached out to them. What are some things that we can do outside of consistently suspending them, tightening up safety plans, like what else can we offer these children? And so when they move in, that's what we're gonna look at. So I'm hoping that we can get supports that families can't get outside for anger management, mentoring. That's what we're looking for as far as those wraparounds go.
I'll just say, knowing from joint initiatives, they do a lot of really good engagement of parents and creating some they're called circle of dads, circle of parents, where parents can come in and process the things that middle school parents at Galileo experience. And it's just space for people to do some of those things that are really met by the data that we're seeing in families and students as we reach out and engage them too.
So I understand the wraparound services, but when you say you have someone that has a 94% success rate in assisting students and families, what does that mean? That
I
the
think she
students
asked-
are,
Yeah,
So-
that, I think that's a question for
For
joint
joint
initiatives
initiatives.
that I asked and I didn't
Okay.
write it down, like I have it in my notes for June 12th board
Okay.
meeting and I
I'll
wrote
go
down
back and look
94
for it.
success rate and I asked them and she answered and now I
Okay.
cannot
Yeah.
remember, so we can go back and watch
Yeah,
the
but-
recording.
I will have to do that,
But it's in the
It's-
recording,
it's
she
in the-
answered. Yeah.
It's in the improvement plan too, so if CDE comes along and visits and asks that, you, I don't know, maybe just add another
Yeah,
sentence.
I can
or
absolutely,
whatever.
yep, give a little bit more, I mean, that makes sense.
I
Okay,
don't remember the June, that part of it, so.
couple of other questions,
Write it down.
Alina.
I am, thank you, I just wanted to.
Absolutely. Enrollment, that number that you shared with the board about 234, that's a significant drop from where you were 2 years back. Is that a smaller incoming sixth grade class? What is it that is contributing to the reduced enrollment out there?
Our sixth grade class is still our largest, and then it's eighth grade. We lost quite a bit of our seventh graders. I think that is attributed to they didn't have a full-time sixth grade math teacher. I think it was the stability of the staff. I mean, we had 21 openings when I took over, and I was only able to fill 20. When I think about the students that left and where they went, it's also programming. We don't have the beautiful electives that they might have at North or at Holmes. And so it was just more opportunity to access to different things outside of what they got in elementary, because if you look at our electives, it pretty much is art, music, PE, right? And so those were just the opportunities when we talked to families, why they were talking about leaving. We also had a lot of families move. When I looked at our dropped enrollment, many of my families moved to Pueblo, to D2, and I do have some military families that were stationed back out in New Jersey. So I think there were a lot of aspects that played into that. One of them did go to New Jersey, so.
Well, thank you, I mean,
Yeah.
So we did come to the board last year for middle school pathways in an effort to stabilize our offerings of 9 middle schools with no real identity to any one of them, other than reputation at their ability to deliver either quality neighborhood school or a specific program. And so Galileo, in partnership with the state, because the state's recommendation in our 5th year on the clock now, was to go for a community schools initiative. So that fit very conveniently into the fact it is a much larger building than the number of students that it serves, and or the number of new students that it has served in the last 5 years. So why not take advantage of that space and go into phase 0 year, planning year for our community schools initiative? Then we're gonna have to have a conversation.
That's exactly what I was.
We've made that decision, so now my recommendation to the board is, yes, in the same way that we bottomed out in our decrease in enrollment averaging as a district and are now adding, the recommendation from the demographer, which are the strategies that we have played, is to offer specific pathways and robust programming to give people a reason to make that choice. If all things being equal, that the 9 middle schools are comprehensive middle schools, and one is on the state watch list and the other ones aren't, why would you go there? So again, we are beholden to the very system of which we then have the ability to strategize behind. And so we've made an initiative, not significant dollars, but we have some capital dollars set aside to be able to turn that in partnership with joint initiatives to what we think it'll be responsive to the needs of our current student population and the general part of the city that it serves. But I will say to you that, again, in that picture, if you remember the way we did it, pretty much the large middle schools remain comprehensive middle schools with specific programming to be attractive to parents. And our smaller middle schools, most of which have, well, I won't say most, some of which sit in smaller buildings, like Mann's just not a big building, they're gonna have a pathway there, because make that right for the people that want that experience, where all the way back to 2 years ago, the diffusion of the light as the pathway and the student goes through the experience. Some kid is gonna take outdoor education at Halbert and end up with an internship and an apprenticeship downtown with Parks and Recreation, one of our comprehensive high schools. But we're not gonna end up with a high school that's all outdoor ed. So middle school is gonna be the space where we take the smaller populations, turn them into pathways, and see if we can stabilize it. And if we can't, then we have to have a different conversation.
That's,
The good news is overall enrollment is stabilizing in traditional schools, up overall for the portfolio. And again, if you look at the elementary schools, enrollment, attendance, achievement, growth in pathway elementary schools is significantly larger than the control group that it's compared to. Parents are responsive to that. The demographer wasn't wrong. I can't tell you how hard it is to see a school lose 150 kids, which is a third of its population set, in the beginning of the last year to now then the forecasted end of this year. But that's exactly what you have when you're 5 years on the clock without a plan.
Yeah.
Now we have real plans. So you'll see in each one of these schools, they're not just, we're gonna take the unit district improvement plan and do a good job at it at the school level. It's something specific and different.
thank you. I do appreciate what you're bringing to the table and putting a pathway school in there and specific initiatives to turn the school around. The hope is that this would stabilize enrollment and you would then increase enrollment. Otherwise, this is a point of conversation at some point in time for the board to bring up and have this conversation. We are not at that time right now. The other thing that Superintendent Gall referred to, that you are 5th year on the state watch list, does anything automatically trigger now that we need to go to state? I think you can only be 5 years on the clock, right?
Yes and no. There are schools in the state of Colorado that are 10th year on the clock. So the two things that have been and will be triggered were the state review panel visit, which happened last February or March. And we will be going to the state board for a required hearing likely in February. Julia and her team and I have already started preparing for that with Andy Swanson, and Mike and I are meeting with Andy next week to talk through what that will look like and what the state board's recommendation may be.
Okay, keep the board apprised on that, and hopefully, like what Superintendent Gall is talking about, when you are 5th year as a priority improvement school, why should parents choose this school for their kids' education? And this is like what comes first, but we need to address the academic achievement and growth of our kids out there. And if we can ensure that our students are getting high quality instruction in every single classroom, as Superintendent Gall says, then we can turn that around. Man was similar to what we talked about. Man was in a similar situation last year. I think it was a priority improvement, and this year they are an improvement school, so they moved up. At some point in time, Galileo has to come out of it too. I believe in what you came and presented to us. I think you bring a strong leadership to that school, but that's got to translate into results going forward. So
We will get off the clock this
Okay.
year. You will
Thank you.
not see me here next year.
But you know, we started with it when we showed the whole feeder pattern.
Right.
It's not the clock. It's not the state watch list. We have to get where 50% of kids in a building are at state, at the expected grade level. Then you can really shift your resources to the kids who need it. Right now, you're playing whack-a-mole, and yes, we solved staffing, maybe. So for 1 year, everybody's better staffed. But again, the quality of instruction and the ability to break kids into smaller groups and get the extra time, you heard the time piece from Adams earlier, how we tackle this. I love when we come off the clock. It's great, it's a good look for the district. But we still have only a third of our kids overall at grade level across the district. Remember this. We have schools that are likely to get Governor Blue ribbons where 3/4 of the kids are at or above grade level. And that you still, as a system, we're hovering around a third to 40%.
And that's
we make progress every year at 2 and 3%, but that's telling you to get to 50%, that's 8 years.
That's 8 years.
That's the bigger policy question that you posed right
That's
at the
the
very
policy
beginning.
question, which
What
is-
is it that we need, especially at the middle school level, to bring a level of accountability? You cannot have kids failing in classes throughout
moving
the
on.
6 and moving on to it. What do we? And that's a bigger policy question. We will discuss that hopefully today. It looks like we have a long evening today, but thank you.
It's only 8.
We still have 2 more schools.
One more school.
One more school and then the other presentation. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. Wish you the best, guys.
Have a great night.
Can I make one point real quick?
Yep,
just
go
on
ahead.
data moving forward? Just something that I don't know if everyone knows, the most powerful force in educational data is self-selection effects. So when we look at a school that has lost, what did you say, 130 kids when you did the math real quick, 150 kids? Your expectation should be the students who are still there are the ones who are going to need the most help. So the challenge that they have to overcome this year is now substantially harder than it was last year.
Yep.
And when we look at data, we should have a little bit of grace for that fact.
Absolutely.
And that our teachers are also
You
coming
couldn't-
and needing a lot as
Yeah.
well.
You couldn't have, because the families that can make that choice have made that choice to, if necessary, move them to a different school. And then you are left with smaller demographics of students who probably have the highest possible needs.
Yes, just want to make sure our data people recognize that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Sherry.
Okay, does the board want to take a little bit of break at this time, or do you want to continue with, okay, then let's take a 5-minute break and we will reconvene in 5 minutes. Members in person, and Director Jurgensen is not joining us remotely at this point in time. The third school that we have in front of us is Mitchell. I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Callback.
Sure. I believe that most of you know George Smith, the principal at Mitchell High School, and he's brought with him one of his assistant principals this evening, Mr. Brian Blanc. And so I will turn it over to their team to get us started on Mitchell's USIP.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us to present here tonight. Not super excited about being here by any stretch of the imagination. After 3 years and going into year 4, I would have hoped that we would have been one of the schools who were at home resting tonight and getting ready for the next school day, but that's not the case. With that being said, we do have a vision that we operate around that is captured in this picture of Cynthia from our first graduating class while I was principal. But it's a vision to operate in a culture that builds, maintains, and restores trust as defined by sincerity, competence, reliability, and care to deliver a first-class school to our community that prepares all students for post-secondary readiness, college, and career. This image is telling me I'm supposed to go to bed. My apologies. But this image is close to my heart and it's close to my heart because I truly believe in the vision of this school. This picture, and it's the same picture that somebody used to capture the vertical alignment and the vertical alignment of the problem and the challenge that the district faces in terms of the southeast area. But when you walk into the front doors of Mitchell High School, this picture is there because any student of color, any student who is white, any student who is impoverished, it doesn't matter, but any student that walks through the doors of Mitchell High School should understand that the goal is to get them across the stage in a short order and be prepared to be successful in post-secondary life, no matter what they choose to do. 2-year college, 4-year college, university, military service, or some type of industry job. That is the goal, and so that's why I'm spending time on this slide, because much passion and determination has gone into 3 and almost now 3.25 years of work on my part, but on the part of the community, both at the central office level and community partnerships. So there's passion in this, and I'm very disappointed that I'm here talking to you tonight. So I'm gonna put that because this is publicly documented, and I am not happy about the results. Much of it is out of my control, and it's a systemic problem like Mr. Gall mentioned earlier. But moving forward, which button? This button? All right, here we go. This is more of a demographic slide. I'm not going to get into the details. I know you received this on Friday and have had time to review it. But essentially what this captures is that we are a school of innovation, deemed a school of innovation in April of 2022, when me and Parth were sitting at the Colorado State Board at that time, and we were getting innovation approved at that time. We are now in year 4, and as mentioned earlier in other presentations, we will be going back for a state review or a rehearing actually, projected in February because we are still on the watch list. But we are operating within the and upon the foundation of our 5 pillars of turnaround. We are really focused on track for graduation, and we are really interested in continuing to provide options for traditional pathways, alternative pathways, advanced pathways, and CTE pathways. And that is some evidence that I'm going to bring forth later. We are sitting as of today, before I came in front of you tonight, at 771 in terms of enrollment. And that's a number because as I get into some of my other points, what you're going to see in terms of theme is that Mitchell is stabilized. I am proud about that. I'm not proud that I'm sitting in front of you because we are still on the accountability clock, but we are stabilized, and I am proud about that, and I'm proud to lead that work at Mitchell High School and continue to do so. Stabilization, I think, could be linked to growth, and then I think achievement could be linked to enhancement. We're not at a point of enhancement right now. We're just now becoming stable. After 3 years going into year 4, and I think the data that I will present to you will demonstrate that. One thing I will bring about on this slide is the fact that out of those 771 students enrolled, 15% are multilingual learners, and 17% are special education. That equates to about 115 students and 130 respectively. You will also see in terms of the southeast area and in terms of D11's ratios of free and reduced lunch, Mitchell High School has approximately 500 plus students who are designated as free and or reduced lunch. And we know all of the challenges that come with that. You've heard 2 presentations before me that link that together, and then they end up advancing up to Mitchell High School. The next slide here demonstrates and represents attendance rates and discipline. Very proud. One thing I will just quickly segue and tell you that what you're going to see here is improvement in pretty much every area except what's represented on the SPF. Anyhow.
I'm not laughing at George, I'm laughing at, we made an announcement to the staff earlier in the year based upon the indicators that we had, that we were predicting that Mitchell would actually be off the clock.
Yes.
But the discontinuity between our early indicators and what the state actually measures on PSAT and SAT was a gap that we had not really accounted for, and you'll hear some of that plan this evening on how to close that gap. But the early indicators support what George is showing you, that the building has not just stabilized in its enrollment, it has the conditions for success. Yet I know the board is sitting here not just in my 3rd time talking about it and George's 4th time talking about it, but many of the members of the board were here when the decision was made to reconstitute the school. And we have to answer to the state this year in February, so.
Thank you for punctuating that, Superintendent Gall. But what this slide represents is some of that data in terms of improvement of course, we want to be at a 90% attendance rate or above, but we are pleased to present to you that we have maintained an attendance rate of 85% or better for the last 3 years, and we are hovering right around 90 and 89% as we sit here tonight. Also, in terms of our discipline and not only ISD or in-school suspension or in-school detention related in relationship to out-of-school suspension and expulsions, you can see that there is an increase of in-school suspensions, a decrease in out-of-school suspensions, and also a decrease in expulsions. Though it may appear that you're like, oh, well, why are you happy about in-school suspensions? Well, what we do is a progressive discipline model that is firm, fair, and consistent. And when students are demonstrating unexpected behaviors and behaviors that are adverse to what we believe in terms of character and integrity and excellence, those students are still wrapped around, kept on campus so they don't disengage further through an out-of-school suspension or an expulsion. So though we would still love to see those in-school suspensions rates decrease, we are pleased to see that expulsions and out-of-school suspensions are decreasing on the other side. And we have other data to correlate and parallel with this that shows that the safe learning environment is in fact improving and is represented around and within our school. Next slide here is going to represent staffing and staffing implications. We know that a stable staff is going to promote, again, greater stability, and it's going to promote that long-term growth and success. The reason why I wanted to highlight 21 and 22, that was the year that I became principal. After the reconstitution, we brought back 60% of ESP and we brought back 40% of the license when they all had to reapply if they were interested in remaining at Mitchell. Those were the folks that, or the representation of folks that we brought back for those employee groups. Going into 24-25 this year, you can see how those numbers have improved over the course of time, and retention rates are at 80% heading into this year. What you'll also see in particular are teacher and SSP staffing rates that have incrementally increased heading into 24-25. I just caught an error, my mistake on that last bar. That should be 24-25, but the number is accurate at 90% in terms of that incremental increase in stabilizing for licensed staff there. The one thing I will point your attention to is the 15% multilingual learner CLDE, highly qualified teacher. Again, that represents this year approximately 115 students that require those services. And of the 8 positions that are not staffed, you can see there 5 of them are those MML teachers that we need to be servicing those students. Now, those students are receiving services. It can improve, and it must improve, or else we're going to continue, whoever the principal is going to continue to sit here and tell you their plan to get off of the clock, because with our population and the demographic plus the socioeconomic status, that question has to be addressed, and that was a direct prompt from our CDE liaison that we work closely with.
I do want to just highlight, I remember being here last year and we were talking, we'll get to the 5E slide in a second, but last year the observation was we have a staffing problem. And so many of the staffing initiatives that the district has taken on have come from trying to solve first and foremost the Mitchell problem, and then seeing that it did extend its way into middle school and elementary school, particularly in this feeder pattern. But for the third school now, you're seeing that we are still not all the way there, but we are much, much better, that children are getting exposed to certified staff. Now, the quality of what we're able to deliver and the consistency of that will still be harder to sustain at a priority improvement or turnaround school than it is at a blue ribbon school. But that again is where I'm asking for the board to think harder about policy of how is this not us having to ask people to do more for more money, and how do we think about this is the power of what it means to be a large system. And so we have shared in, they all got my Chamberlain speech in Gettysburg, that the North just decides that Chamberlain is gonna hold the flank at Little Round Top, and if he doesn't, we're not the United States of America as we are right now. And so he charges, it does a bayonet charge, because they're out of ammunition, because if you lose Little Round Top, then goes, you know, you can watch all your dystopian specials on Showtime and Netflix and all those things. It is critical for this district to see the challenges that exist at Mitchell, as you saw earlier at middle school at Galileo, and also saw in beginning at Adams, is first solved with us taking the best qualified people that we have and putting them against the area of greatest need. It is not a pathway solution for a middle school. It is not a new bus policy. It is best swimmer, deepest part of the pool. Children, we saw last year, were responsive and they got excellent growth. But when you're at 5 and 10% of achievement, growth in math and ELA, Briggs and what's my other friend's name at your school?
Which department?
The English department guy.
Oh, Elder?
Elder. Briggs and Elder have come up with interesting ways to get kids engaged and get growth in math and ELA. But the SAT team doesn't care anything about your growth. Because when you take the PSAT and the SAT, it's like, thank you very much, Dr. Briggs and Mr. Elder. What was the one you read earlier about the middle school? 0% of
written.
75 kids scored 0 on, it was at Galileo. Like a 0 on the written portion of a state level assessment tells you that we gotta get off the growth game. We gotta get to achievement. We get to achievement in the same way that we all as parents have insisted that our kids get the access to the highest quality instruction possible. Sorry for the interruption.
No, great points. Thank you for that. So now we're gonna move into the data story from last year and how that reflects. So when I was here last year and presenting this similar unified improvement plan, I do have to highlight, and I'm going to just call it out and socialize it right now. We met every growth indicator that we set out to achieve, and matter of fact, exceeded it, every single one. So the strategy and the plan worked impeccably. Not to say there was not room for improvement, but what we set out to do last year, we achieved and actually exceeded. So that's what I will put forth on that. And again, it's in that same stream, in that same line of stability. What you'll see here is the improved systems for instructional coherency that we had established last year. And so in ELA, we set out a goal to meet that 53 MGP on the STAR assessment. And again, this goes to Superintendent Gall's point, that's around growth. We know we need to grow kids. I have STAR assessment sitting in front of me from this year. This year, I have 9th graders that are in our building that are at 6th grade level, but they expect to pass an aptitude test for an Ivy League Harvard. So that's the reality of it. But going back to last year's data, we exceeded that 53 goal on both ELA and math, 67 and 55 respectively.
And this is based on STAR data.
Correct, yes. And this is a slide where I feel like it was very powerful in terms of how the district did on STAR. And once again, I do want to call out that we do believe that there is value in the STAR assessment. We see that it did move our students inside of our walls from when they walked in August to the time that they left for summer break in May. Just wasn't enough as a result of the PSAT and the changes to the SPF model, which we'll be getting into down the road here. In terms of district comparison, the average district MGP on the STAR was 58, and again, we exceeded at a 67, and that was for ELA in particular. Oh, by the way, on that, oops. What did I do? What am I doing? I hit something. There we go. On the last slide here, you can see we were the top of the top in terms of secondary schools. Math, we were in the top 4. The District MGP was 52, again 55, just highlighting that in terms of comparison. So in terms of what Superintendent Gall mentioned, when we were anticipating, hooray Mitchell, this is why. We'll get to maybe some of the gaps and why some of those gaps exist and what we're going to do to address them. This is some instructional data that we capture independently and at a site level at our school for instructional best practices, because as Superintendent Gall mentioned, we have got to put high quality instruction within the classroom to get learning from our students. And so we've been working on this for 3 years and very excited about the work we're doing now and the partnerships with the district and the guidance that we're getting. But this is going to show you some of our measures that we set out to achieve last year in terms of getting standards aligned instruction in front of students that are planned by teachers within PLCs. We've heard about the power of collective efficacy in terms of teachers planning and prepping together and attacking things with a collaborative approach. In terms of this just simply represents that doing formative assessments that aren't linked to grades, but truly measuring standards-based learning is important. And you can see that we started off last year around this same time at a 40%. Our goal was a 72, and we made it up to a 63. So yet again, these are all indicators that everything is moving in the right direction and will not be represented on the SPF. In terms of the perception data that the district has adopted, the 5 Essentials survey, we came back with a not yet organized rating last year and needed to adjust and adapt and strategize about how we are going to approach that. And again, in line with our vision, everything is in line with our vision. We have to establish, build, maintain, and create trust among all stakeholders. So we set out to get a 40-point rating per the 5 Essential survey on all stakeholder trust indicators. Once again, we achieved every single one and excelled past it by double digits. What that has done for us is set us up moving into the 24-25 school year as a school that is partially organized for improvement. The one highlight here, which again we can improve upon, is we missed our parent survey by 1/10, and so the threshold is 20%, and so that's going to be a goal of ours to get that parent survey back within the data. Transitioning into the SPF, so this is why we're here tonight. You can see all the red. We went from when we entered the school year in 21-22, when I first became principal, I inherited a priority improvement status. In my second year, we dropped to turnaround. We pulled back out last year into priority improvement. We were hoping to pull out into improvement this year based upon what I just represented in terms of the in-house data, if you will. Obviously that didn't happen and we dropped back into turnaround. So we don't have a nice clean trend line or not even an implementation dip, but what we have is kind of this zigzag thing going on here. Now there's variables that were outside of everybody's control. There was a new SAT, PSAT test. There was also a different platform for the test. We go from paper and pencil to digital. A lot of impoverished families in the socioeconomic demographic that we live in, high technology and quality technology and access to that is an issue. And so the best technology they get is what they get through the district. And so some of these variables, also the CMAS science was incorporated back into the metrics this year for the first time. And we didn't hit that metric though. You'll see represented down the road that we were very close to approaching in CMAS science, which is exciting and kind of signals some of the strategy that's going on in those classrooms and how we can maybe learn from those inside of the literacy classrooms and the math classrooms.
So before you move from that page, it does call what year you are on in that
Yes.
plan, year 6 at this time, and that comes with CDE going to the back to CDE at some point in time in the spring to address it. And then when you look at the academic achievement, academic growth, and PWR and the percentages that you have out there, I was comparing this data, 2024 data, to your 2023 SPF out there. And it looks like academic achievement, you stayed the same, 7.5 out of 30. That was what you had last year too. And PWR, you went up a little bit, but you dropped by about 5 points in academic growth. So I don't know what the STAR data showed about all the MGP, it just didn't translate. And I don't know how they calculate academic growth here, but that academic growth part was where you dropped from last year to this year, which pushed you from priority improvement to done.
Absolutely.
Just wanted to make that observation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, now, and I'm gonna go back to STAR data, because this is another indicator where STAR benchmark also measures proficiency and achievement as well as growth. This is STAR proficiency data for ELA and math, and what this represents is the does not achieve bar at the beginning of the year for both ELA and math dropped at the end of the year, which means kids are moving across the bands into partially meets, approaching meets, and exceeds, minimally, but pushing into those bands. Again, another indication and optimism around what we were expecting to see. Here, I'm going to highlight on track for graduation. This is a site level definition. Students should not have, we don't want them to have any Fs, but they shouldn't have any more than 2 Fs or else they're gonna fall behind on credits. That's an in-house definition that we use to track our data. But what we are seeing in terms of the post-secondary workforce readiness that President Malpacum referenced earlier is we do feel that this data is also correlating to improved post-secondary workforce readiness results on the SPF. And so you can see on track for 9th grade has increased by 9 percentage points in 1 year, and for all students 5. We have a goal in our Unified Improvement Plan this year to increase that 75 to 85. So we're being ambitious with that as well. The next 3 slides I'm not going to spend a ton of time on, but basically they tell the same story, and this is where we're getting into the SPF, where we fell down on growth and achievement, which did knock us back into turnaround. So we experienced consistency in evidence-based reading and writing 22 to 23, and growth in math in 22-23, but then the significant decline this year. And so you're going to see that in PSAT 9, you're going to see that in PSAT 10, and you're going to see that in the SAT. It's a consistent story. And so really the question now becomes, in terms of the story, is how do we address it? Because this is the ball game that we're playing now. Again, I mentioned earlier we can learn from the 11th grade CMAS science in terms of the bright spot there. We earned a 715. You need a 721 in terms of median scale score to reach approaching. So we're right at that cusp, and that earns us a couple points. We're approximately 3 points below the cut line in terms of getting back up to priority improvement. That's not the goal. We want to be in improvement or performance. But with that being said, we're right at that cusp for CMAS science to hit that point, and much of that is chemistry. But what goes on in science classes and what has gone on in science classes at Mitchell High School are project-based learning, labs, hands-on work, student agency, real-life application. This is what the district and the leadership of Superintendent Gall, Area Superintendent Callback have brought in terms of partnerships and supports, student agency. And how can we build up teachers' practice to put that into every classroom, not just science? Knowing we're not quite there with science yet, right? And teachers have got to have that growth mindset and be provided that professional development. but there's a bright spot there that we can learn from. When students are engaged, thank you for passing the cell phone policy there for the ABCs, but when students are engaged in learning and they have high quality instruction in front of them and they can actually apply and think and problem solve, we're gonna see those results and that growth and that achievement. Here's the post-secondary workforce readiness slide, and what you will see represented here is approaching numbers in graduation rate. We want to see those bump back up, and I am confident we're going to see those bump back up because the books are cleaner. Since my tenure, Brian Blanc, he came along tonight for the ride, but he's doing a great job of keeping the books clean, working with central enrollment to make sure that enrollments and withdrawals do not count as drops. What we will see, and you won't see it represented here, though this is a graph right off of the state's database. In terms of dropout rates, you will see a downward trend line for 3 years. What you're not going to see is another 0.8 of a point decline in dropout rate. Now, we have to get to a 2.1 dropout rate to receive some high quality points on that. And that is the goal. We set that as an ambitious goal. But when you see the 23-24 numbers represented on that down the road when the CDE updates their website, you're going to see a downward trend line on dropout rate. You're going to see an upward trend line on matriculation. And I got to call out the 7% increase on Tier 2-year institute. One thing I will say here, and I see Superintendent Gall's chomping at the bit to jump in. I just want to say, I do see the value in our partnership that is represented within the innovation plan from 2022 that will be revisited potentially when we go to the rehearing in February. But the work with University of Chicago was not money wasted. I want the district, I want the community, and I want the board to understand that was not money wasted because the On Track for Graduation and 9th Grade Success, which Governor Polis came to Mitchell this past summer and signed 9th grade success legislation for the whole state of Colorado, was adopted at Mitchell High School first and set the precedent maybe for the state. But that work in terms of On Track for Graduation, 9th grade success teams across the board, and thank you to the powers that be for the Promise scholarships, we are seeing that 7% increase in 2-year institute matriculation.
So just to bring to the board the idea of how we're trying to problem solve instead of a school at a time, this has basically become the set of metrics for the Future Centers team for Future Ready. So if I take Mitchell out of this and I put in a comprehensive high school who is not on the watch list, we are underreporting everything we know that's happening in these schools. I don't know why yet. I don't know if it's a disconnect between the day that we send it or the language that we use compared to the way the state uses it. But you'll see there's a trend up in the number of students that are matriculating afterwards. But as I had said, the reason for the Future Center was I was tired of handing out diplomas and 1 out of every 3 kids saying to me, I don't know what I'm doing next week. Every kid has to have a plan. If every kid has a plan, I promise you these numbers are going to be above what the state's reporting, right? And if you haven't been to Mitchell, particularly haven't seen the junior ROTC do an event like they did today at the 9/11 memorial, these are kids who care, and these are kids who have adults in the building who care about their future. We're failing somehow on the reporting. We call this page 3. Oops, I touched it. It'll go crazy if you touch it. We're failing for all our high schools on page 3. We just don't talk about it because all your high schools don't come here and talk about it. We know we have the strongest CTE program in the state. We hear that regularly from CDE. We have the partnership with Debbie Shackelford as the only urban school liaison for apprenticeships. We're doing things in our district that no other district is doing. We're missing something on this page 3 piece. So now Valerie Skates and her team at Future Ready, they own page 3 in partnership with every one of the schools. So again, what we really want to avoid here is Sherry didn't do a good job in getting George to do a good job and get George's counselors to do a good job to report on page 3. I don't think we even, as we discovered this year on attendance, the definition of attendance, I'm so sorry to read you back, is much different than how a parent thinks about attendance. What is it? Because like when we asked this, the first thing we said is that can't be right. We got an Air Force Junior ROTC program. How could we have 0 military enlistments? Now, of course, none of these matter. This is the only one that counts for the state. But it just says to us that our attention hasn't been in reporting. Because there's no way that Joey, and who was the colonel before him? Woodford. Right, there's no way they put 0 people in the last 3 years into it. I mean, we actually had the kid last year that got the scholarship. So we're gonna get better at that reporting on page 3 as a system, of which I think Mitch will be the first one to get the biggest bang for the buck, because it'll help them move up in their SPF. But there are significant points left on the table for the district on page 3 for secondary.
Hopefully the future ready is going to take care of it.
Yes.
I think some of these, the state could be pulling the data from other sources, matriculation rates and stuff like that. I don't think it could be our reporting either. Because I don't know how we keep track of all the matriculation rate after.
Well, in the same way that we do a request to review, I would love to be able to see where the number came from and then say, I mean, how many promised kids did I announce last week? 185, right? For the district-wide, and we're at over 40 for Mitchell alone. And I'm not sure I'm seeing that if 40 kids go to Pikes Peak State College and you graduate at 140, so I'm at 30 to 40%, I know went to a specific 2-year degree institute, like those numbers aren't showing for one reason or another. And I don't use that as an excuse, I use it as an action that we're taking forward.
That would definitely support school level improvement efforts if that reporting got cleaned up.
CDE released the 2024 graduation numbers.
When do they release?
When? Yes,
I
because that
believe-
was one of my thoughts, is this is all 2023 data, it's so hard to know
Yes,
forward.
I've been told sometime in January.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Is that true? Okay. Alright. In terms of feedback from DAC and SAC, really what you're gonna see on the top there, on the top left under DAC, they are asking for more composition information that we will include in the update to the Unified Improvement Plan. And hopefully, if there are DAC members watching, they will see that much of that was included in this presentation that we can just pull and put into the Unified Improvement Plan at that time. And then the second part is, it's what Dr. Malpacum brought up. He's like, what the indicators from STAR versus the discrepancy from the performance on PSAT and SAT. We have answers for that, and we are already taking that into action, and we'll be getting into that into the final slides after we move forward here. And then finally, at the school level, the SAC just wanted to know more information about exactly what the instructional framework, what the instructional coaching framework looks like in terms of the action item for MIS 1. Major improvement strategies 1, 2, and 3. 1 is around instructional systems that are guided by data to provide high quality, rigorous instruction and supported through coaching cycles. Major improvement strategy 2, supportive environment and student engagement. And major improvement strategy 3 focuses on post-secondary and workforce readiness. Some of the action items that we're going to look at here to address those major improvement strategies. The top bullet I want to highlight for number 1, and it speaks to President Malpacum's point. We have got to do a better job of analyzing short cycle data that's going to show up on the SPF. And so we were analyzing, and we knew we were sitting pretty in terms of the STAR benchmark assessment in terms of growth. We were feeling good about that. I know Superintendent Gall was feeling good, and then it just didn't translate. And so what we've done, leadership from Area Superintendent Callback, we have purchased a PSAT and SAT prep test. So we are slated to have our students take that test, have the data to analyze, have the data to set short cycle action plans around, and adjust very nimbly throughout the school year versus reacting next year this time because we get surprised again. So I think, I feel that that's a good move and we're ready to activate that strategy in short order.
George, before you
please,
say,
yes.
I'm gonna add on to that one just a bit. So we did just purchase a fall PSAT for every Mitchell 9th and 10th grader and a fall SAT for every Mitchell 11th grader. And it's really not as test prep, if you will. It's gonna serve two purposes for us at Mitchell. The first one is that we actually get data in time to do something with it. Our goal is to have students taking this assessment before the end of this month, the end of September. And our understanding from College Board is that we get data back pretty quickly. And so if we have that data back by the beginning of October, we've got a long stretch between then and the spring assessment that we can actually use that data to plan from. We've not had that opportunity specific to PSAT and SAT in the past, and so this really changes our instructional practice. The other one that's a benefit for us in supporting teachers at Mitchell is that central office will then use that data and information to help teachers really to understand what we talked about at the earlier two levels about we have teachers take the test. Part of what we're planning to do with this is to actually have teachers take a PSAT or an SAT. And the purpose behind that is to help them really understand this is the level of question that students have to be able to answer on these assessments. And if our instruction does not match that all year long, we stand zero chance of students achieving on that test when we get to the end of the year. We're doing a great job at Mitchell on STAR with moving students out of that bottom band of performance. That's where that growth is showing up. But moving out of that bottom band of performance is not yet translating to, and now I can perform at the level expected on SAT and PSAT. And so that's really our twofold goal with this implementation is number one, just to have the data, and number two, to be able to use that data to sit down with teachers in a planning session and help them understand how to build instruction that is at that same level of questioning that students will experience on the test. You've heard it a couple of times tonight. The hardest question students experience should never be on the test. They should get to that PSAT and SAT and say, oh, I've done this before. I know how to do this. I did this in Miss Halfway's class, and I'm confident in it. I know how to work this problem or how to write this answer.
So this is a gap in our best first instruction strategy, which is the PSAT and the SAT are aptitude tests. They are not skills-based tests. If you have enough skills, you can probably connect a couple of skills to solve the aptitude question of which you've been asked. Now it goes back to the feeder conversation that we had earlier. When you have repeatedly been met at maybe we introduced grade level content, but then immediately had to go into remediation to get you back up to not achieving grade level content, because that's still what happens in most of our classes at middle school or high school, especially when you have a concentration of kids that are further behind. When you get to the rigor of this type of test, this is not about teaching to the test. This is about exposing kids to understand what is the test really asking you. So I tell this story all the time. I'm a 490 the first time on my English for the SATs. I'm a 710 on the math, right? I don't think I used my calculator or a piece of paper when I took the math part of the SATs. Because it didn't really ask you to solve a math equation. It asked you to understand if you have a right angle triangle and a very small angle for A, then is B going to be really close to 90 degrees or close to 20 degrees? If you guess the one that's close to 90 because you go 90 plus 2 must be 88-ish or so to get 180, you got it right. You didn't need your calculator. If you've not been exposed to the testing the concept instead of just your ability to regurgitate the skill, it is a great gap. It is a great gap. And so yay or nay that the state uses the SATs. We can cry fair or foul or whatever it is. I actually think it's of great benefit to our kids that they are exposed to this because these are the entry of exams that they're going to take when they get to college. And if you ask both UCCS and Pikes Peak State College, they will say what's the number one thing that they need to overcome in their relationship with schools like District 11, not just District 11, they're all over the city, is many kids spend half of their freshman year taking non-credit bearing classes. Because they are not at college level entry for a community college, which now is a 4-year degree, so it's a state college, and the satellite university for a state system. Because we haven't given that level of rigor. So this is not teaching the SAT, it's exposing not just students to the SAT, but staff to the SAT. That yes, you might actually get the question right on the worksheet that I gave you, and it ties into the agency work that we're doing. If you can articulate what the learning was in that worksheet, now we're at a more advanced level of learning, right? And I remember Director Hafley talking about what she thought to be true in the first couple of years of teaching and grading against a rubric, and then actually reading for the content of what it was that a student was communicating. That's where we want to get to. And we're not there, and it's not that we're not there at Mitchell. We're not there for every kid whose numbers are the same as Mitchell's. Remember I said this earlier. Mitchell kids are all over the system. They're just concentrated at Mitchell. And we're just not talking about the other high schools because overall they have other kids that buoy the system up.
Exactly.
But the gap of being exposed to real rigor exists for many of those children. That's on us as a system to solve. And what's so exciting about this is nobody has figured this out in America. Nobody has figured out how do you catch kids up that are furthest behind. How do you align your talent against the greatest need? How do you actually take the power of a system and put it around a school that is notoriously, or a feeder system that is notoriously on the list? We have strong early indicators that Mitchell has stabilized. We need a little bit of policy help that says that next year's incoming 9th grade class doesn't move George further back because they were worse than last year's 8th grade graduators from the feeder system, right? That's the first most critical thing that we can do. And direct me, change Summer Bridge that never happens again. We'll go figure it out. We'll come up with ideas of year 8.5 for kids to make sure that they have fundamentals walking in the door. But then we need the help of the board in the same way it stood so strongly on the ABCs. You got lots of really good arguments on why parents wanted their kids to have a cell phone, but you knew the right thing to do was the integrity of the classroom was more important. We make plenty of accommodations, particularly for IEPs, 504s, and for medical reasons. But we stood by the policy. Let's create policy that brings rigor into every grade to ensure that even if the answer was, we got it, we got 3rd grade reading finally to meet it. So in 9 years, we're gonna have high school figured out. That's a terrible answer, but let's at least get to a place where we know that the thing that we get right will stay right as it goes forward. And right now it diffuses. Kilroy's not here, but Kilroy ran the numbers. The top half of the Chipeta 5th grade class by performance all went to Eagleview. So yes, we know we lose families from Chipeta in the Northwest to our D20 partners. No, we don't lose families. We lost the top half of the performance level of a 5th grade class all to a different district because we didn't communicate what our value proposition was at our middle school option to those families directly enough to get them to buy in. I said this, I'll be at Man tomorrow morning for our coffees and cookies. That's where we're gonna start this year. Man is better because Kyle and Carrie are spending time together. She got more kids to come over from 5th grade from Stratton into 6th grade at Man. They're right across the parking lot from each other. If you can keep the quality in the system instead of diffusing it and losing it, then you help solve the problem from both ends.
Okay, let's finish here.
Okay, just a couple more points here. It was interesting, data connection tonight too. We did a data dive to crosswalk this year's STAR assessment from the fall with some PSAT and SAT data that impacted the SPF, and we left 26% of points out on the table on writing conventions, and that was the same numbers that were left out on Adam's slide earlier, and I didn't know what I was going to see tonight when I came here. So it goes to Superintendent Gall's point. We're leaving points on the table on SPF all the way up the vertical alignment. Last two bullets here, where we have been able to exercise innovation, we have. And we've already done that in terms of activating our instructional coaching framework this year. In the innovation plan, it says that instructional coaches can capture data to inform professional development and coaching cycles. That got approved through our SLT, our school leadership team, and we are excited that our instructional coaches, which two of them are homegrown and one is a district transfer, who sees the value in working at Mitchell High School, are going to be able to.
George is being kind. We have not been brave enough on innovation. George, from his perspective, has exercised as much innovation as we have given him. It took me too long to get to $5,000 a year, and I still don't think it's enough. I still think we should spend 20% more on salary for the top 20 teachers in the district for 20 months on loan. Boom, period, dot. Make a rally call. I love everybody that's there. How much have we paid? $80,000 in the first year's version of innovation. Our staffing is better this year. I asked Sherry to come up with a plan, get the other area superintendents, and want department head partnerships. Each high school picks which department they want to do. Not that the department heads at Mitchell aren't great people and doing great work, but having two department heads think about the challenges that are at Mitchell. Maybe every Monday morning, the department head comes over from one of the other comprehensive high schools. We got to just break the system. The system right now, these are all incremental little things that we're doing. Did we ever get the recording devices?
Yes,
And
the Cloud
explain.
12.
Right, Cloud
Yes.
12. Explain that.
So we have cameras, in fact, I think George has it on this slide,
yeah.
in a number of classrooms and in a professional development space at Mitchell. And they are using those currently to capture exemplar lessons that coaches and peer mentors can use when working with other teachers to show, here's what this instructional strategy or this instructional move looks like in a classroom with our Mitchell students. You know, sometimes we'll hear, well, sure, that worked at that school with their students. This strategy worked in our school with our students. And they are working to build a library of exemplary practice that's then used in coaching cycles as well.
And so Sherry just spoke to bullet 2, and really I will just highlight, and you've heard about this, it's a theme throughout the schools, and then that also articulates the alignment of the leadership and the district in terms of text first planning as a district professional development. We got an extension or a contract to extend that PD into our school. The Cloud 12 camera system, which is another innovation. Also instructional empowerment to increase that student agency and teaming within the classroom. And we will continue to use our short cycle surveys to inform 5 essential data as well. Moving into our strategies for post-secondary workforce readiness, again, and it's been highlighted already earlier, but the future centers, Mitchell's Future Center, which is under development still, we are very excited about to continue to improve upon our post-secondary workforce readiness initiatives. Also, our advanced alternative CTE pathways, we are excited, our concurrent enrollment, we're very excited to make sure that we are promoting that school-wide future orientation for our students. Here we have central supports, the impact team, our partners. What I really appreciate about the impact team is the fact that it goes hand in hand with our instructional coaching framework. I get a coach. I have a coach that's mentoring me who has walked in similar shoes and can inform some decision making and be a thought partner around that. Also, University of Virginia Darden School of Business. I'm in that cohort right now, as well as other leaders in the Southeast area where we're using business models to inform systemic change in education. And I think it's very innovative in and of itself with that concept, and I see great value in that. You've heard about the Staffing Stability Initiative. I'm not going to get into that too much, but we are also working to exercise that and finding days where we are going to exercise that initiative. And then finally, our capital projects. which not only improves the aesthetics of the building so that then we can demonstrate the value to our stakeholders about why we want to keep our talent within our boundaries, but it's going to be appealing for them to do so in the amount of $18 million plus. The next slide will represent these projects either that have been completed or are still under construction or development. From the planetarium on the top right, we are waiting, I got an update today, we are waiting on a decision to be made about where the servers are going to be placed and then a cooling system on the servers because they're gonna get hot. So we're waiting on the technology there. The bottom right, if you didn't see the Mitchell swimming lockers, the lockers were probably there since 1965. They were rusted out and ready to cut somebody. Those are brand new lockers. All we're waiting on are the locks to be installed. The Future Center is pictured in the bottom middle. In the upper left, new work done on the band room for the VAPA program. Obviously the ball field and the track, the gym was painted, and then the two courtyards, which were co-designed with student leaders. And so very excited to have all of this brought to fruition to deliver that first class experience to our community. And really, because like I said at the beginning, because this is going to be captured and archived, I do want to really express my gratitude to community partners, to D11 colleagues, to parents and families, to Mitchell staff, and to the students, and to my family, past, present, and future, for supporting Mitchell in the journey up to this point for the last 3 years and into the future. We are going to need that support. We're going to continue to need that rally and that wraparound. But I truly, from the bottom of my heart, want to say thank you so much. And the staff is just, not only are they working hard, they're working harder than most. And so I'm going to say that. And so please visit, please come see us. We're very proud about the work we're doing. And we are going to continue to push for the growth and the achievement that we need as we progress. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the feedback. Board, I know that it's getting late. Feedback or concerns or questions? Okay, go ahead.
So you said that 5 out of 8 of your open FTE are the multilingual learner
Yes.
staff positions.
Yes.
How can we help? How can we help fill that spot? What do you need?
That's an amazing question. I wish I had an answer for that because
We are short across the district.
the
Swigert,
country
who
maybe.
didn't come forward, because we took their brief when we thought they would be on the list, has 4.5 FTE, one of them filled.
Say that last part again. I didn't.
They have 4.5 CLDE positions on the books, one of them is filled.
Who are you
At
talking
Mitchell?
about?
No, at Swigert.
Oh.
So this is a repeated problem across the system. I think it's, the universality of how we pay. Instead of saying you have twice the percentage of multi-language learners as any other high school in the system, we have to do something significant about that. It's a high demand, low availability asset. It's not a District 11 unique problem. Everybody else is suffering from that. What I would say is there are probably lessons to learn from our CALT initiatives. It's taken us 1.5 years to get to a place where we have better supports. One of the things we negotiated this year was if you take continuation credits as a teacher in areas that are of interest to the district, we'll pay for that. So that's a longer answer that maybe we can entice some staff members to pursue this as advanced certification for themselves. It's just, a CLDE certification is not easy. We're not gonna solve that in 2 months.
Well, to your point, supply and demand. I mean, it's basic economics.
I was just gonna
Yeah.
bring up, you have the innovation zone status. We can do more with, supply and demand.
Across the nation.
Economics of it.
Absolutely. Across the nation, the state, and definitely in the southeast area. I didn't know that about Swigert myself, but there's a low supply,
Yeah.
very high demand. You pay for that, you
Yeah.
know?
And we could pay for it because you have that innovation status.
Absolutely.
So I guess my other question, similar to the others, how are you using your Title I funding?
Great question. 3 instructional coaches. If I didn't have the title funding, I wouldn't be able to staff 3 instructional coaches because of the decreasing enrollment. Though I will say that our enrollment is increasing as well, so that's another indicator of stabilization. But we would not have the ability without title funds to staff 3 instructional coaches, which I don't know, but I would argue is probably the most instructional coaches at a site level in the whole district. But yes, that's one way we're using title funds. We're also using title funds to ensure a supportive environment through our, it used to be called E-Hall Pass, now it's Securely Pass. But if you walk around the hallways at Mitchell, generally speaking, some of the issues in terms of supportive environment where students are avoiding instruction don't happen at Mitchell High School.
Is that the same that Saban has?
Not sure.
Oh,
Not sure.
I was just there, so.
What other, we also use title funds for transportation to get students peak experiences and college and university and industry site exposure so that they are walking universities, college campuses, going to flight lessons and whatever other industry opportunity they may have to have a peak experience. And so we use title funding for transportation. Obviously, parent events to get that community engagement. I would have to look at the actual budget to see exactly. Guest speakers that could be motivational, specific to our demographic.
I guess Mr. Rowley touched on this concept earlier. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. Of like when you have a school with a certain number of teachers and then that teacher who is so successful at getting growth leaves, you can see a dip in achievement or growth. I wondered if that's sort of what happened at Mitchell, and I don't want to put you in an awkward spot saying something. So I noticed there was a dip, and didn't you have a retirement in the math department this past year? And so has that impacted maybe?
So our retention number would be higher. We had, and this includes one ESP member, but we had 2 retirements. We had a phenomenal assistant principal who's now the principal at Swaggart, which I'm excited about that. And then another retiree in the math department who was excellent. So to your point, am I going to speculate that that's why we decreased across the board? No, I won't go that far. But what I will say is our retention numbers would be greater, but those were valid reasons outside of maybe discontent that they left Mitchell High School.
It goes to the larger initiative that we've talked about, not just for Mitchell or the schools you've heard tonight, but stabilizing the workforce is a goal for HR. It is one of their larger initiatives. We have anywhere from 15% in outright turnover of teachers that leave the district, but when you look at intra-movement, we averaged over 25% every year since I've been here of people who are not in the same building. And if a principal is left with 1 out of every 4 teachers is new every year, we're not on MIS 1, 2, or 3, 2.0 or 3.0 like we should be. We're on MIS 1.1.1.1 because we're constantly starting over again. And so as we took the team to United, and when we went up there, one of the things that they were proud of is they said to people, this is the last application you're ever gonna have to fill out. Because now you're with United Airlines, you have arrived. You are at the place where you will spend the rest of your career. People have the right to make the choices that they wanna make. We have too many people making choices not because I've done my career, it's time for me to go on, or my family has a different set of needs and I'm moving. We have a lot of churn in the system that we can solve with better coaching, with better supports, with better incentives to make sure that people see the value. It's great.
Making sure that across the board, if you have one retirement, you know that all of the quality that you're getting in staff is at that same level.
That's right. Leave no instruction to chance. Remember, the student is the only one who doesn't get to exercise choice in America's great choice debate. Nobody has said every kid gets a free car ride to whatever school they want to go to and they get to pick their teacher. Right? That's not how it works. And so the kids who are left at schools that don't have highly qualified staff, that don't have all the programming that they need, require these types of investments. And so, again, I know that we're on the clock. Believe you me, I know. I talk to the state all the time about it. And we've made significant capital investments to show that we believe in the future of Mitchell High School. I think the foundation is there. We're going to continue to press on our own innovations. So you might get some noise on the things that we choose to do on CLDE teachers that says, how do I get October 1st that there's now 4 new CLDE teachers?
Bring it.
But when the
Bring
phone
ideas.
rings as somebody who loses on that, right, then, you know, whether it's a neighboring district or even it's an internal school, we just have to think as a system,
Okay, any other questions? Go ahead.
Um,
Okay, I'll come to you. No, you go ahead.
Okay, just curious if Mitchell has any ELL teachers, is language a part of the issue?
That's the same thing.
So, yeah,
The CLDE.
yeah, CLDE, ELL, MML. But I think you're bringing up a great point and clarifying point. We do, interestingly enough, we have such a satisfied teacher, and I'm gonna call her out, hopefully she sees this, Shannon Harding, who was in the ELA department last year, said elected to, I would like to serve, because she has 2 qualifications, she's highly qualified in 2 areas, ELA and CLDE. She elected to go and work with the students over there. So we actually were able to fill her position in ELA and move her into our CLDE program in building. But the other 2 classes are right now being filled from highly qualified CLDE teachers who are retired and probably would like to retire, really truly retire at some point, but they keep coming back to Mitchell. They're happy to serve the kids, but they get treated well at Mitchell High School.
Any other questions, Dr. Haefele? Okay.
Good.
And the number was 16%, is that what we clarified today?
15 MLL and 17 special education.
Gotcha.
You keep changing all the acronyms, so we get confused, like it used to be ELL, then it became CLDE, now it's MLL.
I'll fix that for you when I get to the state.
Thanks. Just some observations. One, this MIS is so similar to last year. It's all about creating and implementing the same thing. That's how it feels as I look back at last year and look at this year. And consistent instructional infrastructure or consistent systems. And I just feel like I understand that once you have a system, you should be refining it and making change, but it feels like you're constantly reinventing. Do you feel that way at all? And maybe you used to be with University of Chicago, right? And now you're with University of Virginia and instructional empowerment? Both.
Both, yes.
Okay, I didn't see Chicago referenced in the improvement plan.
They're not as much of an actor, I will say.
Okay.
Moving maybe well into the future. And Sherry, feel free to jump in, but we were able to get the 9th grade success grant through the state of Colorado to extend the partnership because we weren't willing to invest the 11 tax dollars to that anymore. Though we still, like I said, we see value in the University of Chicago partnership, like I said earlier. And some of those systems that we have in place, we don't want to just abandon if we had a grant available to us. So we applied for the grant and we got awarded the grant. But what the district, in partnership with site level administration, decided was to make a more pronounced partnership with UVA. So it's both. UChicago isn't necessarily instructional based though. It's really more around 9th grade success teams, data driven systems to support MTSS. So we can clarify that more down the road, but in terms of your question around instructional systems, yes, it's going to sound and feel very much the same. I would agree with you on that. But the one piece I do want to highlight is the component about the instructional coaching framework that we were not able to exercise in innovation until this year, due to staffing, due to capacity, due to competency, due to instability. So that's the component of that MIS1 that is radically different, actually. Just that one component is so immense and complex. Yes, and we can get into more of that later.
I think, it's a fair question that there really isn't much different other than what we talked about around this table was we did not have any early indicators that anything was sticking at Mitchell High School. The 5 Es went from semi-green and yellow to all red, and now we've moved away from that. We didn't have growth to report. Mitchell High School has beaten the metrics that the district established for growth. So that's as much on me that as items that we're establishing don't translate over. That's a gap that we've noticed in our assessment strategy. I don't think magically allowing kids and teachers to see the pre-SAT one more time is going to suddenly change that. But I would say that what you see now, or I'm hoping you're hearing, is more clarity of a single thread through this district, which is the number one way to student achievement is access to high quality instruction. I'm here to say that I believe we have as best a chance now with the plan that we have now, and I have to go forward to the state to say that. And if we can't do that, because the concentration of failure and the depletion of funds, 770, great. That's still half of any one of our other high schools. It's still half. And that's not because we have less babies that live in the area. When you draw the boundary, the district or the high school that has the most choice out is Mitchell. That is still a ramification of the decisions that were made years ago. We've inherited those decisions. George has and I have, as has Sherry. Sherry wasn't in the role that she's in right now. So we're doing everything we can to play on the strategy that says the number one way to student achievement is access to high quality instruction. If these plans don't meet what the board believes will get us there, then the board again has to think about other policy decisions on what do you do with the Mitchell community. Do you charter the Mitchell community? There are charters in the state of Colorado that outperform what we have been able to do on growth. Do you close Mitchell High School? Because at 700 kids, you could fit them in the other 3 comprehensive high schools. We are going to pitch to you what we believe is the best course of action with the traditional school that we're running right now, and yet it is limited. It is limited. We do run a portfolio approach. Is there room in our portfolio for a pathway-specific high school? If you go to Mitchell High School and you engage with the Air Force Junior ROTC cadets, you will see kids that love what they do in that school. And I know those kids, and it translates into the classroom. Is there a values-based program? I know we can't do ROTC for every kid. That's against the law. You're not allowed to do that. But could we create a 9th grade values-based program that every kid gets the values that you get from Joey's thing? That now everybody's like, yeah, I'm a Mitchell Marauder. If you were there today, you heard graduates come up to the microphone, talk about what it means still to them to be at Mitchell. And yet, and I'll say it out loud, all the people who give us a hard time about Mitchell, none of them were there today at the 9/11 event. So it's all the things we don't do for Mitchell, and then when Mitchell has a chance to showcase what they do right, then all those people aren't there anymore. If people really want to believe in Mitchell, then believe in Mitchell. And if these plans don't get us where we need to get to, we're certainly accountable for it, and I'll take the heat for it. Me, Sherry, and George are gonna go to the state and we're gonna make this case. If the board doesn't believe that this gets us there, then the board has to have a different conversation. This isn't about, do we have the right department lead? Do we have the right principal? You saw 3 different schools come forward today that represent the same people in the community that have been incredibly underserved over and over and over again. And I don't blame, I mean, I don't take credit for winning or losing in that regard, and I don't pass that to any other superintendent. No school district in America has figured this out and sustained it. Do we think that we can do that? And then what does the board want to pull on a lever to help us do that?
Okay. That's a bigger policy question. Dr. Hart, are you
No,
still,
I
you're
have
done?
more questions,
You have more
just
questions?
a couple other things.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes,
Finish.
and it has become clear you obviously want us to address some policy questions, so hopefully we will get to that yet tonight.
Okay, or we can talk about it when we get to it, but finish your line of questioning.
Thank you. Then the other thing was, I know the accreditation subcommittee for DAC suggested you expand on the description of the school, a narration, and I just wanted to second that so that we would have the context going forward for if we look back at this improvement plan.
And now, are you referencing that first bullet on that slide?
Yeah.
About, and I referenced it as more like composition, but are you asking for more of like a story? I'm just trying to clarify.
When basically there is no description, as I compare the three, like tonight, or improvement plans, there is no description of the school. It used to be far more extensive. The notes from accreditation say it's not required in the current form, but a brief description of the school would be helpful, in their words, to provide context for the plan, and ensuring the summary, which in a way, to me, there was no summary really, accurately describing the school itself. In the other descriptions, we were seeing the breakdown of student populations, just general information that would be putting things in context.
Understood.
For CDE, for
We brought
anybody
some
who references
marketers in to help with the enrollment piece over there. I'm gonna give that section over to the engagement to make it be more reflective of the experience you have, and so I appreciate the
Absolutely.
observation, Director Otto.
Okay, thank you. The other, looking back at last year's improvement plan, it did talk about the possibility for students Spanish-speaking students to take some of the benchmark tests in their own language. Are you still doing anything like that?
We exercised that last year, and I think that's also a reason why we saw great growth in the STAR benchmark assessments, because they were able to take it in their heritage language. Can't do that on PSAT and SAT.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, we exercised it last year. Was that a good approach? Did it give us bad data? Possibly. Should we do it this year? Possibly. But yes, we did.
Do you have, I mean, is there any teaching happening in Spanish at this point, like a little mini Spanish academy or anything like that, where we can meet have some instructions in the native language that would maybe raise their knowledge?
That sounds like the logical and reasonable approach, but actually research suggests that immersion is the best way to get students adjusted into the new culture that they're in. We've been told by our own CLDE department, yes, you want to have some scaffolds, yes, you want to have supports around the building, but immersion is the best way to learn a language.
That's
Sherry, do
actually
you
our-
wanna bring up the biliteracy
Sure.
certificate that you had brought to me?
And I was going to mention too that is our district-wide strategy. It's not specific to Mitchell, that for students learning to speak English regardless of their primary language, immersion is our direct path forward. We do have students for the past, I believe, 2 years, a very small number, who've earned a seal of biliteracy as graduates from Mitchell High School. One of our opportunities moving forward is to expand that significantly. To your point, we do have students who come to us fluent in another language. That is a marketable skill when they graduate from high school, if they are literate in both English and the second language. And that is what the seal of biliteracy would do for them. And so one opportunity that we have to improve not only our English reading and writing scores, but also for students to improve their skills in their home language, is to really fully develop a seal of biliteracy program at Mitchell and significantly expand from single-digit numbers of students who are earning that seal to well beyond the 15% of multi-language learners that we currently have at Mitchell.
Well, thank you. I think that's everything. I just, I hope we don't see you next year again.
I don't want to come back either, Julie.
And I asked for Mitchell to be the school that I got to hang out with this year, because I do believe that those students are absolutely capable and that everybody there is surely passionate about what they're doing, and the stability in the staff. I know the challenges that you have to be facing with that. And yes, the feeder system and all of those things coming together, but yes, I hope you do so much better next year.
I don't know that, I think you might not meet a more competitive person than me, and so what I said in the beginning, I respectfully meant it. You know, I like to hang out with you guys at, it's almost 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock at night.
So,
It's an hour past your bedtime, more than an hour.
well, I'll summarize some of my thoughts up here. You know the commitment of this board over the past couple of years to Mitchell. All the pictures that you show up there about the capital projects that are going on, the brand new field up that is there, the amount of money that we've invested in heating and ventilation, planetarium, and the courtyard now, and I can go on and on.
Absolutely.
And then the instructional empowerment, and then like what Julie alluded to, University of Chicago, University of Virginia, and now you have that $5,000 which Superintendent Gall talked about in additional money because of that staffing initiative. In addition to it, I think we still have that TAP initiative or something like similar to that where
It's part of the earlier innovation.
So all I'm saying to you is, and Superintendent Gall has also said this, like, so goes Mitchell, so goes District 11, as goes Mitchell, so goes District 11. We are committed to Mitchell at this point in time, that we want to see some of the money that we are investing into the school reap rewards for our students. When I look at some of the scores up there, 5% of our students meets or exceeds grade level proficiency in math in the SAT score. That's really concerning. We want to provide something where these students are prepared for life after graduations, and we are not there at this point due to various reasons. And I'm saying it's not alone your thing, because like what we talked about today, it's a systemic problem. When you are being dealt a hand from feeder schools where students coming into the schools are 2 or 3 years behind, there is only so much we can expect you to do to pull these kids up to proficiency level. And those are the challenges that this board has to address at some point in time, which Superintendent Gall put out a call. What does the board want to do at a policy level to support you guys? So, and then the reconstitution too, that was not something you had anything to do with. That was the hand that you were dealt with, and you inherited that thing. Having said all that, we are invested in Mitchell, and we certainly want to see you at board meetings in the future, but not for this. This and some of it we can talk about at the board level. It's ultimately sometimes our hand is going to be forced. But what happens at the state level? Because you have to go to the state level, and I was there with you 2 years back, and at some point in time, the state is also going to push back and say that we need to see some results out there. So we will continue to support, and we'll have that bigger level of conversation as a board. What is it that we can do at a policy level? At our secondary schools, we saw some incredible growth and achievement at our elementary schools, but middle schools leading up to high schools are a problem at this time. What do we need to address? Hopefully the cell phone is going to be another helping point for you that is going to remove those distractions and contribute to student achievement at the end of the year. And the same thing with the pre-SAT that you are talking about. I am curious to see if that has benefit at the end of the line, exposing the kids to that test at one level, like at the fall. Some of these kids haven't even taken a test at the pencil and paper as opposed to taking it on the computer. Maybe that's going to help them marginally get up to the next level and prepare them.
One piece of a much larger
strategy. But I would like to see if that does help. We've beaten this to death. I think the district believes and Superintendent Gall believes in your leadership, and that's why you guys are up there. So I wish you the best, and the board will take on the bigger question about what is it that we can do at a policy level to help address this problem. Okay.
Yeah, and I want to say I do feel the supports. I do see and feel the investment. So I want to say thank you. In terms of need, and this is just something living in my shoes for going on 4 years and turnaround, I would ask leadership across the nation, across the state, and within this district to be sure, because what we learned in Virginia, at least I'm in my first year cohort in Virginia in that partnership, and they speak about the balance of accountability with support and making sure that we're clear about what both of those look like. I never ran away from accountability. I think you guys know me well enough by now. I never run away from accountability. Ensuring that that's balanced with true support. And then to your point, sir, you said, Director Carey, you said grace, and that's really, you've given plenty. Julie's given plenty. We got to mix that grace with some strategy and
help and support from the board level too. That's the policy level. And I piggyback on what Superintendent Gall mentioned about this morning when I was there, I saw the JROTC perform out there.
That's right.
And Colonel Hinson introduced me to a parent of one of the
Jessica and Jennifer, I don't know which one's the student and which one's the mom.
I don't know, but you know who I'm talking about. He was the junior who was leading the thing, and the parents, when they were talking to me, they said that their son, who's a junior now, didn't want to go to Mitchell, but the dad, because of various reasons, because they weren't even sure, the son wasn't even sure that Mitchell was going to be open at that point in time because of all the reconstitution. So, but the dad said that you can go into that school and be a role model. And the dad shared with me that the student came back to him a year back and said that he made the right decision by going into Mitchell. And now he's a shining star out there, one of the bright spots that you have at Mitchell. So going back to the value of a program like JROTC, I strongly believe in it. And to what Superintendent Gall talked about, maybe there is that character development is essential for our kids, and whether that is going to be JROTC, we can't force kids into JROTC, but there is some type of character development program out there that helps benefit our kids. Okay, thank you guys. Thanks for the late evening, and
I say we wrap it up here.
Yeah, we do. So 2 things that I will say to the board. One, you heard the call from Superintendent Gall about the policy and what is it the board want to prioritize. Next week, we are going to be talking about the board priorities, and maybe one of the things that the board should foot stomp on is going to be what are we going to be doing at the secondary level, the middle school accountability, and then build a pipeline where we hand students who are better prepared to enter high school at the 9th grade level. That's something that we need to look at as a singular overarching board priority for this year. The writing component is another thing that stands out to me. STAR assessments do not evaluate the writing ability going back from elementary school, middle, and high schools. So our students do not get any feedback on where they are on their writing skills, but when they go to take CMAS assessments and PSATs, SAT, writing is part of it. How do we prepare our students better? I'm not sure. That's another conversation that you guys have to look at. Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
I think, CMAS is not a very long brief, but I would rather just use it to prep the UDIP, so we can start with CMAS.
Yep.
And I think it's a natural fit into the UDIP. It still fits into the non-action because it doesn't come to the board until the first week of October.
Yep.
I think we're pretty light next week overall anyway.
I don't think so. We have a packed agenda. Look at Nicole, and probably Nicole will say we have a packed agenda.
We do, but we have some space on the 25th, so.
Yeah, yeah, we'll have to shift things and move things around as we move on it. So it went on long enough. Thank you, guys. Anybody has any closing thoughts on this topic at this time?
I just wanna visit the idea of J1 visas again and what that looks like and where the district is with that and wherever that might fit in.
So I had agreed to, per the conversation Director Arnott had brought to me some concerns about staffing. I would like to bring a staffing update in October to the board and a holistic where we are in staffing. If that's okay.
Okay, last thing, I did send the board an email and Kevin Coughlin is up here about his interest in having an informal get-together with the board. If the board has no pushbacks on that, I will go ahead and say that this would just be an informal get-together with no agenda, anything on that. Does the board have any feedback on that part of it?
Me personally, I will have a hard time with extra evenings, but
Yeah.
I have no objection, just.
Okay. Okay. People that attend can attend, people that cannot because of time commitments may not be able to attend. Okay, with that, we are adjourned at 9:57 PM.
It's not